Hey guys. This is What If Naruto Was Hero Himmel's Reincarnation. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one. Let's start.
We are pain, that's all. We are God.
Chapter 1. The first time Naruto Uzumaki died, he was surrounded by friends. He remembered the weight of Frieren's hand in his, so small and cool, her green eyes finally, showing the tears she'd held back for 1,000 years. He remembered Hyder's quiet prayers, the old priest's voice steady even as his own hands trembled. He remembered Aizen's massive frame shaking with sobs the dwarf would later deny ever shedding. And he remembered thinking, as the light faded from his eyes, I wish I had more time. I wish I had told her. Then he was crying in a hospital room, tiny fists waving at fluorescent lights that seemed impossibly bright, and a woman with red hair was smiling down at him with tears streaming down her face, and somewhere in the distance, something roared. Naruto Uzumaki was born on October 10th, in the middle of a catastrophe, with 8 decades of memories from another life already settling into his infant consciousness like sediment at the bottom of a river. It took him 3 years to stop screaming. The thing about remembering a past life was that nobody prepared you for how disorienting it would be. Naruto had 80 years of muscle memory telling him how to hold a sword, how to swing it, how to parry and thrust and dance through battlefields with the grace of a man who'd trained since childhood. But his body was 3 years old, and his arms were like noodles, and the wooden practice sword the orphanage matron gave him to stop his tantrums weighed approximately 10,000 pounds. Himmel always made it look so easy, he muttered to himself, swinging the practice sword in clumsy arcs that would have made his past self weep with shame. The matron, who had been passing by, stopped dead. What did you say? Naruto froze. He was 3. He wasn't supposed to know that name. He wasn't supposed to know any names, really, except maybe Hokage, and Ramen, and Demon Brat, which was what the villagers called him when they thought he couldn't hear. Nothing, he said quickly. I said, Himmels. Like the clouds. The clouds make it look easy. Flying. Because they're clouds. The matron stared at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she shook her head and walked away, muttering something about strange children and that fox's influence. Naruto let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. He needed to be more careful. By the time he was 5, Naruto had developed a system. The memories from his life as Himmel weren't going anywhere. If anything, they were becoming clearer as he grew older, as if his brain was finally developing enough capacity to hold them properly. He could remember entire conversations now, word for word. He could remember the exact shade of purple in the twilight sky over the Demon King's castle. He could remember the taste of Hyder's terrible cooking and the sound of Aizen's laughter, and the way Frieren's hair caught the light when she wasn't paying attention to anything but her spells. He could remember her. That was the hardest part, actually. Not the memories of battle, or the trauma of dying, or even the existential crisis of realizing that reincarnation was apparently a thing that happened. No, the hardest part was remembering Frieren, her smile, her voice, the way she looked at him sometimes when she thought he wasn't watching, and knowing that she was gone. That he'd left her behind. That she was probably still out there somewhere, living her endless elven life, and she'd probably already forgotten him because what was 80 years to someone who measured time in centuries? He tried not to think about it too much. The system, then, was this: Naruto would be Naruto. He would live this life as if it were his first and only life, because in every way that mattered, it was. Himmel was dead. Himmel had been a hero, and he'd saved the world, and he'd died peacefully surrounded by the people he loved most. That story was over. This story, Naruto's story, was just beginning. And if sometimes he slipped up and called the sky beautiful, in a language no one in this world had ever heard, or if he occasionally practiced sword forms that wouldn't be invented for another 1,000 years, or if he spent hours staring at nothing, lost in memories of a life that no longer existed, well, that was his burden to bear. Nobody needed to know. The academy was both easier and harder than he'd expected. Easier because the theoretical portions were almost laughably simple. Tactics? He'd experienced commanding an army. Strategy? He'd helped plan the assault on the Demon King's castle. History? A little different in this world, but the principles were the same: learn from the past or be doomed to repeat it. Harder because, well, because he was supposed to be the dead last. The failure. The demon brat that everyone wanted to see fall on his face. It would have been so easy to excel. To show them all that he wasn't worthless, that he had decades of combat experience stuffed into his tiny body, that he could probably teach half these classes better than the instructors. But that would raise questions. Questions led to investigations, and investigations led to people poking around in his head, and Naruto had seen what happened to people in this village who were deemed unusual. They disappeared. Or they ended up en route. Or they ended up like him, alone, hated, with nothing but their own secrets for company. So he played the fool. He flubbed the written tests, scribbling wrong answers even when he knew the right ones. He failed the taijutsu exams, deliberately tripping over his own feet and leaving openings a blind man could exploit. He botched the ninjutsu demonstrations, pouring too much chakra into his techniques, and watching them explode in his face. The only thing he couldn't bring himself to sabotage was the survival training. Uzumaki, Iruka-sensei said after one particularly disastrous exercise, when Naruto had somehow managed to fail every objective while simultaneously keeping himself and 3 other students alive against a simulated enemy attack. How did you know that trap was there? Naruto shrugged, scratching the back of his head in what he hoped was a convincingly idiotic manner. Lucky guess? Iruka's eyes narrowed. You disabled it using a technique that isn't taught until chunin level. Did I? Huh. Must have seen it in a book somewhere. He laughed, loud and grating. You know me, sensei. Always reading books. That's definitely a thing I do. Iruka stared at him for a long moment. Then he sighed, rubbing his temples. Just go to lunch, Naruto. You got it, sensei. Naruto practically fled the training ground, his heart pounding. He really needed to be more careful. The first time he saw Ino Yamanaka, he didn't think anything of it. She was just another clan kid, all blonde hair and confidence, and that particular brand of arrogance that came from growing up with a name that meant something. She hung around with Sakura Haruno, pink hair, loud voice, absolutely obsessed with Sasuke Uchiha, and spent most of her time gossiping about boys and practicing her flower arrangements, and generally acting like the princess she apparently thought she was. Naruto dismissed her almost immediately. She was nothing like. No. He wasn't going to think about that. He focused instead on his own problems, of which there were many. The academy graduation exam was coming up, and he was running out of excuses for why he kept failing. He'd already repeated the test twice, and people were starting to talk. The demon brat can't even pass a simple exam, they whispered. Maybe the fox made him stupid. Maybe he's faking it. That last one was closer to the truth than Naruto liked. He needed to graduate. He was 12 years old, or rather, his body was 12 years old, his mind was something approaching 90, and he couldn't keep playing this game forever. He needed to become a ninja, to gain access to the resources and training that came with that title, to start actually doing something with this second life he'd been given. But he also couldn't graduate at the top of the class, or even in the middle. That would raise too many red flags. He needed to barely scrape by, to be so unremarkable that no one would look twice at him. It was exhausting, being this strategic about failure. The night before the graduation exam, Naruto sat on the Hokage monument and stared out at the village. It was beautiful, in its own way. Different from the kingdom he'd known in his past life, but beautiful nonetheless. The lights twinkled like earthbound stars, and the sounds of laughter and conversation drifted up from the streets below, and somewhere in the distance, a dog was barking at something only it could see. You'd like it here, he said quietly, to no one. It's peaceful. Mostly. When people aren't trying to kill me or calling me a monster. The wind didn't answer. Of course it didn't. Naruto sighed and leaned back, resting his hands behind his head. The stars were different here than they'd been in his old world. Different constellations, different stories, but they were still beautiful. He'd always loved looking at the stars. It made him feel small, in a good way. Like his problems weren't so insurmountable after all. I miss you, he whispered. I know you've probably forgotten me by now. A decade is nothing to an elf, right? But I still miss you. I miss everyone. He closed his eyes and let himself remember, just for a moment. The feel of grass beneath his boots. The smell of campfire smoke. The sound of Frieren's voice, soft and slightly bored, explaining some obscure magical theory that no one but her cared about. Himmel, you're not listening. I'm always listening to you, Frieren. I just don't always understand what you're saying. That's the same thing as not listening. No, it isn't. Not listening would be ignoring you entirely. What I'm doing is called supportive presence. It's very different. You made that up. Maybe. Does it matter? She'd smiled at him then, that tiny quirk of her lips that was the closest Frieren ever got to a real grin. He treasured every one of those smiles, hoarded them like a dragon hoarding gold, because they were so rare and so precious and so utterly, devastatingly her. God, he missed her. Get it together, he muttered to himself, sitting up and rubbing his eyes. She's gone. They're all gone. You're Naruto now. Focus on this life. He stood, brushed off his pants, and started the long walk back to his apartment. Tomorrow was the graduation exam. Tomorrow, everything would change. Chapter 2. Ino Yamanaka had been 4 years old when the memories started. At first, she thought they were dreams, strange, vivid dreams about a world that didn't exist, filled with people she'd never met and magic she didn't understand. She dreamed of a silver-haired elf who spent centuries collecting spells like other people collected stamps. She dreamed of a handsome human boy with blue hair and a smile that could light up the darkest dungeon. She dreamed of a priest who drank too much and a dwarf who hit things until they stopped moving and adventures that spanned decades. Then the dreams stopped being dreams. She was 7 when she finally admitted to herself that these weren't fantasies or nightmares or the product of an overactive imagination. These were memories. Real memories, from a real life, that she had somehow lived before. She was Frieren. Or she had been, once. 1,000 years ago, in a world that no longer existed. Or maybe had never existed in the same way this one did. She had been an elven mage named Frieren, and she had spent centuries wandering and learning and very carefully not caring about anything or anyone. Then she'd met Himmel. Stupid, brave, kind Himmel with his ridiculous optimism and his insistence on doing the right thing even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. She joined his party almost on a whim. Defeating the Demon King sounded interesting, and it wasn't like she had anything better to do, and she'd stayed because, well, because of him. She hadn't realized she was falling in love until it was too late. By the time she understood what that strange feeling in her chest meant, he was old and gray and dying, and she was holding his hand and trying desperately not to cry because crying meant admitting that she'd lost something precious, and she couldn't bear to admit that. She'd cried anyway. And then she'd woken up in a new body, in a new world, with all those memories crashing down on her like a wave. It had taken her years to process everything. Years of pretending to be a normal little girl, while her mind struggled to reconcile the 1,000-year-old mage with the 7-year-old human. Years of hiding her true nature behind gossip and flower arrangements, and a carefully cultivated reputation for being shallow and boy-crazy. The last part was the hardest, actually. Because Ino wasn't boy-crazy, not really. She pretended to be, because that's what normal girls her age did, and she desperately wanted to be normal. But the truth was that she'd already loved someone, once, and she didn't think she could ever love anyone else the same way. Sasuke Uchiha was handsome, she supposed. Mysterious. Powerful. All the things that should make a girl's heart flutter. But he wasn't Himmel. Nobody would ever be Himmel. Ino's father was a mind-walker. This terrified her more than she would ever admit. Inoichi Yamanaka could read thoughts, could dive into memories, could unravel the deepest secrets of a person's psyche with a single jutsu. And Ino loved him. Of course she did. He was her father, and he was kind and patient, and he always made time for her no matter how busy he was. But she was also petrified that one day he would look into her mind and see everything. See Frieren. See Himmel. See a lifetime of memories that had no business being in a 12-year-old's head. So she learned to compartmentalize. The Yamanaka clan techniques required precise mental control, which meant Ino had an excuse to practice. She built walls in her mind, careful and deliberate, separating her past life from her present one. She created mental vaults to store the most dangerous memories, the ones of magic and demons and a love that had outlasted death itself. Her father praised her for her natural talent. Ino smiled and thanked him and tried not to feel like a fraud. The graduation exam was a formality, as far as Ino was concerned. She'd been a 1,000-year-old mage who had personally helped defeat a demon king. A written test and a few basic jutsu were hardly going to challenge her. The only hard part was making sure she didn't perform too well. She needed to be good enough to graduate near the top of the class. Anything less would disappoint her father, but not so good that people started asking uncomfortable questions. She'd had years to perfect the balancing act. The written portion was easy. She answered most of the questions correctly, deliberately missed a few of the harder ones, and finished with a comfortable margin. The taijutsu was harder to fake. Her body remembered too well how to fight, even if the style was all wrong, but she managed to hold back enough to seem merely competent instead of exceptional. The ninjutsu demonstration was almost laughably simple. Clone, transformation, substitution, baby steps compared to the magic she used to wield. She performed each technique flawlessly but without flair, the very picture of a diligent student who had studied hard but wasn't particularly talented. When it was over, she sat in her assigned seat and waited for the results, her face carefully arranged into an expression of bored confidence. That's when she saw him. Naruto Uzumaki. She'd noticed him before, of course. It was hard not to notice him, with his orange clothes and his loud voice and his constant, relentless cheerfulness. He was the class clown, the dead last, the boy everyone loved to mock. He failed at everything, seemingly on purpose, and he never seemed to care what anyone thought of him. But there was something about the way he carried himself today. Something different. He was sitting at his desk, staring out the window, and his expression was wrong. Sad, almost wistful. Like he was looking at something no one else could see. Ino had seen that expression before. She saw it in the mirror every morning. She shook her head and looked away. She was being ridiculous. Naruto Uzumaki was nothing special, just another loudmouthed kid with more confidence than skill. The fact that he looked a little lonely sometimes didn't mean anything. Lots of people look lonely sometimes. It didn't mean they were hiding a lifetime of memories from another world. Naruto failed the exam. Ino wasn't surprised. He always failed, but she was surprised by how much it bothered her. She watched him sitting alone on that swing outside the academy, his hitate conspicuously absent, and she felt something twist in her chest. He looks like he's lost everything, she thought. He looks like he's given up. For a moment, just a moment, she almost went over to him. To say something. To offer some kind of comfort, even though she had no idea what she would say. Then Sakura grabbed her arm and started chattering about Sasuke, and the moment passed, and Ino told herself it was for the best. She had her own secrets to protect. She couldn't afford to get involved with anyone else's. 3 days later, Naruto showed up at the team assignments wearing a hitate. Ino blinked. Then she blinked again. "How did you pass?" Someone whispered. Shikamaru, she thought, though it might have been Choji. Naruto just grinned, bright and false and utterly unconvincing if you knew what to look for. "Guess I'm just lucky." Ino watched him take his seat, watched the way his smile didn't quite reach his eyes, and felt that twisting sensation in her chest again. Something had happened between the failed exam and now. Something significant. And whatever it was, Naruto was hiding it behind that ridiculous smile like his life depended on it. Just like me, she thought, and immediately wished she hadn't. The team assignments were announced. Ino was put on Team 10 with Shikamaru Nara and Choji Akimichi, under the supervision of Asuma Saratobi. A solid team, well-balanced, with good synergy between their clan techniques. Her father would be pleased. Naruto was put on Team 7 with Sasuke Uchiha and Sakura Haruno. Ino felt a flash of irritation. Sakura got to be on Sasuke's team, but it faded almost immediately, replaced by something more complicated. She watched Naruto's reaction to the announcement, the way his smile flickered for just a second before he started loudly complaining about having to work with that bastard Sasuke. The complaints were too loud. Too theatrical. Like he was performing for an audience. "What are you hiding?" Ino wondered. "And why do I feel like I should know?" She pushed the thoughts aside and focused on her own team. She had her own act to maintain, her own secrets to keep. Whatever Naruto Uzumaki was dealing with, it wasn't her problem. It wasn't. Chapter 3. The first month of active duty was an exercise in patience. Naruto had expected the D-rank missions, painting fences, catching runaway pets, pulling weeds from gardens, but knowing something intellectually and experiencing it firsthand were two different things. Every fiber of his being screamed that he should be doing more, that he was capable of more, that he had once led a party and fought demons, and changed the fate of the entire world. But he was Naruto now. And Naruto was a newly minted genin with no notable skills and a reputation for incompetence. So he painted fences. "You missed a spot," Sasuke said, pointing to a section of wood that Naruto had deliberately left unpainted because the lady who owned the fence had been particularly cruel to him as a child. Naruto considered explaining that he was engaging in a subtle form of passive resistance against systemic oppression. Then he remembered that he was supposed to be an idiot. "Oops," he said, slapping more paint onto the fence with exaggerated clumsiness. "My bad." Sakura sighed loudly. Sasuke rolled his eyes. Kakashi-sensei didn't look up from his book. Naruto kept painting and tried not to think about how Himmel would have handled this situation. Himmel would have charmed the fence owner into apologizing for whatever she'd done wrong. Himmel had been annoyingly good at that. The thing about playing a role was that sometimes you started to lose track of where the role ended and the real you began. Naruto had been pretending to be an idiot for so long that he sometimes wondered if he actually was one. Maybe the memories of his past life weren't real. Maybe they were just elaborate fantasies his brain had created to cope with his miserable existence. Maybe he was just Naruto Uzumaki, orphan and Jinchuriki and failure, and everything else was wishful thinking. But then he would be sparring with Sasuke, and his body would move before his mind caught up, and he would find himself in a perfect defensive stance that hadn't been used in this world for centuries. Or he would be listening to Kakashi explain some basic tactical concept, and he would think of 3 improvements before the explanation was even finished. Or he would look up at the stars and remember, not imagine, a different sky, a different world, a different life. The memories were real. Which meant he was real. Both versions of him. Himmel and Naruto, hero and failure, past and present. He just had to figure out how to be both at the same time. Team 7 started doing C-rank missions in their second month. The first few were standard fare, escort missions, delivery runs, the occasional bandit problem that Kakashi handled before anyone else could blink. But then came the mission to Wave Country, and everything changed. Zabuza Momochi was not like the enemies Naruto had faced in his past life. In his old world, demons had been the primary threat. They were powerful, yes, but also predictable. They relied on overwhelming force and terrifying appearances to crush their opponents. They rarely used tactics, and when they did, the tactics were usually simple: kill everything, don't stop killing until everything is dead. Zabuza was different. He was human, or at least he had been once. He thought like a human, fought like a human, adapted like a human. And he was fast. Fast enough that even Kakashi, an elite jounin with decades of experience, was struggling to keep up. The fight was a disaster from start to finish. Naruto watched from the sidelines, frozen in place by a combination of shock and terror and something else, something that felt almost like recognition. This was what real combat looked like in this world. Not the careful, choreographed battles of his training exercises, but raw, brutal violence where a single mistake meant death. It was terrifying. It was also, in a strange way, exhilarating. Kakashi got trapped in Zabuza's water prison. The mission client was in danger. Sakura was scared. Sasuke was trying to be brave but clearly outmatched. And Naruto. Naruto remembered. He remembered standing on a battlefield, surrounded by demons, knowing that he was outmatched and outgunned and probably going to die. He remembered the fear, cold and sharp in his chest. But more than that, he remembered the choice. The moment when he decided that he would rather die trying than live having never tried at all. He'd made that choice before. He could make it again. Sasuke, he said, his voice steadier than it had any right to be. I have a plan. The plan worked. Barely. With about a dozen things going wrong and at least 3 moments where Naruto was absolutely certain they were all going to die. But it worked. Zabuza retreated. Kakashi collapsed from chakra exhaustion. The mission client was safe, at least for now. And Naruto. Naruto had revealed too much. He saw it in Sasuke's eyes as they made camp that night. The Uchiha was staring at him with an expression that was equal parts suspicion and grudging respect. That plan, Sasuke said slowly. Where did you learn to think like that? Naruto shrugged, trying to look casual. I dunno. Just made it up on the spot, I guess. Bullshit. Language, Sasuke. What would Sakura think if she heard you talking like that? Don't change the subject. Sasuke leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. That wasn't improvisation. That was tactical thinking. Military tactical thinking. Like something out of a textbook, except the textbooks don't teach formations designed to fight someone faster than you. Naruto's heart was pounding. This was exactly what he'd been trying to avoid. Years of carefully cultivated incompetence, and he'd thrown it all away in a moment of crisis. Look, he said, keeping his voice light. I don't know what you want me to say. I saw an opening, I took it. Maybe I just got lucky. Sasuke stared at him for a long moment. Then he leaned back, crossing his arms. You're hiding something. Everyone's hiding something. Not like this. Naruto forced a laugh. Come on, Sasuke. You're giving me way too much credit. I'm just an idiot who got lucky. That's all I've ever been. The lie tasted bitter on his tongue. Sasuke didn't look convinced, but he let the subject drop. For now. Naruto turned away and stared into the campfire, watching the flames dance. He needed to be more careful. He always needed to be more careful. But this time, being careful might have gotten everyone killed. He didn't know how to reconcile those two truths. The second fight with Zabuza was even worse than the first. Haku. That was the name of the masked boy who fought alongside the missing Nin. A boy who used ice-based techniques with a grace and precision that reminded Naruto, uncomfortably, of a certain elven mage he used to know. The ice mirrors were a nightmare. Literally, Naruto had had dreams about being trapped in an inescapable cage of reflective surfaces, watching himself die over and over from 1,000 different angles. Except this wasn't a dream, and those weren't reflections, and the Senbon needles that kept hitting him hurt. Sasuke went down first. Stupid, brave Sasuke, throwing himself in front of Naruto to block a lethal strike. He fell, and he didn't get up, and something in Naruto's chest cracked. Not again. I'm not going to lose anyone again. The thing inside him, the fox, the demon, the nine-tailed beast that had destroyed this village 12 years ago and gotten sealed inside a baby who had no say in the matter, stirred. Red chakra flooded his system. And Naruto let it. The aftermath was a blur. He remembered hitting Haku. He remembered the ice mirrors shattering. He remembered Haku's mask breaking, and the face beneath it, young, beautiful, so sad, and the moment of hesitation that changed everything. He remembered Haku dying to protect Zabuza. He remembered Zabuza dying to avenge Haku. He remembered standing in the middle of a bridge covered in blood and bodies, surrounded by villagers who had finally found their courage, and feeling nothing. Nothing at all. This was the cost of violence. The real cost, not the sanitized version they taught at the academy. People died. People who were loved, who had dreams, who had reasons for doing what they did even if those reasons were wrong. Naruto had known this, once. He'd learned it over 80 years of fighting demons and losing friends and watching the people he cared about grow old and die while he remained unchanging. But Himmel had died peacefully, surrounded by loved ones. He never had to face this particular truth again after the war ended. Naruto Uzumaki wasn't going to be so lucky. They buried Zabuza and Haku on a cliff overlooking the sea. Naruto stood at the graveside long after everyone else had left, staring at the two crude wooden markers. "You know," he said quietly, I once heard a story about a demon who fell in love. He was evil, by all objective measures. He'd killed hundreds of people, destroyed entire villages, caused suffering on a scale that most humans couldn't comprehend. But then he met someone, and he changed. Not completely, he was still a demon, after all, but enough. Enough that when she died, he gave up everything to avenge her. The wind blew, cold and salty, carrying the scent of the sea. I don't know if that story has a moral, Naruto continued. Maybe it's that love can redeem even the darkest souls. Or maybe it's that love isn't always enough to save anyone, not even yourself. Or maybe it's just a story. Something that happened, without meaning or purpose or any grand cosmic significance. He reached out and touched Zabuza's grave marker, feeling the rough wood beneath his fingers. I hope you found peace. Both of you. I hope wherever you are now you're together. He turned and walked away, and he didn't look back. Chapter 4. Team 10's first C-rank mission was significantly less dramatic than Team 7's. They escorted a merchant caravan through Fire Country, dealt with a minor bandit problem, Shikamura planned the ambush, Choji provided the muscle, and Ino handled interrogation of the survivors, and returned to Konoha with no casualties and minimal property damage. Asuma-sensei congratulated them on a job well done and treated them to barbecue as a reward. Ino smiled and laughed, and played the part of the cheerful kunoichi who was just happy to be on a team with her friends. Inside, she was bored out of her mind. This is what passes for excitement in this world, she thought, picking at her food while Choji devoured everything in reach. A few bandits with rusty swords and delusions of grandeur? I've faced demons that could level cities with a single spell. I've stood against the demon king himself and watched Himmel. She cut that thought off before it could go any further. She wasn't Frieren anymore. She was Ino Yamanaka, genin of Konoha, daughter of the Yamanaka clan head. Her past life was just that, past. It had no bearing on her present, and she refused to let it define her future. But God, sometimes she missed it. The power. The purpose. The feeling of being part of something larger than herself. The feeling of having someone to fight alongside. The chunin exams were announced 3 months after Team 10's formation. Ino's first reaction was excitement, finally, a chance to prove herself, to show everyone that she wasn't just another pretty face from a prestigious clan. Her second reaction was fear. The chunin exams were dangerous, and she had more to lose than most people realized. Her third reaction, carefully suppressed, was curiosity. Naruto Uzumaki would be competing too. Team 7 had been nominated alongside Team 10 and Team 8, which meant all of the Rookie 9 would be participating. Ino had been watching Naruto since the Wave Country mission. She couldn't help it. Something about him had changed after that mission, some indefinable quality that she couldn't quite put her finger on. He was still loud. Still obnoxious. Still pretending to be an idiot even though anyone with eyes could see that he was not. But there was something else now. A weight behind his eyes. A heaviness in his movements. Like he was carrying something too big for his shoulders, but he'd decided to carry it anyway. Ino recognized that weight. She carried it too. Stop it, she told herself firmly. You're projecting. He's just a boy. A normal, annoying, completely unremarkable boy who happens to have the 9 tails sealed inside him. That's all. But she kept watching anyway. The first phase of the chunin exams was a written test. Ino understood the real purpose almost immediately. It wasn't about the questions themselves, which were deliberately impossible for anyone below Jounin level to answer. It was about information gathering. About cheating without getting caught. She could have passed easily. 1,000 years of living had taught her many things, including how to acquire information through means both fair and foul. She knew at least 3 different ways to read someone's answers from across the room without using any jutsu at all. But she was supposed to be Ino Yamanaka. And Ino Yamanaka's specialty was the mind transfer technique. So she used the mind transfer technique. It worked perfectly. She invaded Sakura's mind, copied her answers. The girl was annoyingly smart, even if Ino would never admit it, and returned to her own body without anyone being the wiser. Mission accomplished. Then she made the mistake of looking at Naruto. He was sitting 2 rows ahead of her, his paper completely blank. He wasn't even trying to cheat, he was just sitting there, staring at the questions with a furrowed brow, like he was actually trying to answer them. What is he doing? Ino wondered. He has to know this is an information-gathering test. Everyone knows. Why isn't he? And then she saw it. A tiny movement. So small that she almost missed it. Naruto's hand twitched, ever so slightly, and suddenly there was an answer on his paper. Then another. Then another. He wasn't writing. The pencil wasn't moving in any way that corresponded to the marks appearing on the page. He was hiding his true abilities. Just like she was. Who are you, Naruto Uzumaki? The final question was a gamble. Ibiki Marino explained the rules with obvious relish. Anyone who chose not to answer would fail, along with their entire team. Anyone who answered incorrectly would be banned from ever taking the chunin exams again. People started dropping out immediately. 1 team, then 2, then 5, then a dozen. The room emptied steadily as Genin decided that the risk wasn't worth the reward. Naruto didn't move. Neither did Ino. She watched him from the corner of her eye, waiting for him to panic. Waiting for the mask to crack. Waiting for some sign that he was just a normal boy who was in way over his head. Instead, he raised his hand. Everyone tensed. Even Ibiki seemed surprised. I'm not going to quit, Naruto said. His voice was steady. Calm. Nothing like the loud, hyperactive persona he usually projected. I don't care if I'm a genin forever. I'd rather fail here than give up without even trying. That's not the voice of a 12-year-old, Ino thought. That's the voice of someone who's failed before and decided it wasn't going to stop him. Ibiki stared at Naruto for a long moment. Then he smiled, actually smiled, for the first time since the exam began, and announced that everyone remaining had passed. The room erupted in confusion. Ino barely heard it. She was too busy staring at Naruto, trying to figure out who he really was. The second phase of the exam took place in the Forest of Death. Ino had faced demons. She'd fought in battles that determined the fate of nations. She'd spent a century studying magic that could unravel the very fabric of reality. The Forest of Death was, objectively, not that impressive. But it was still dangerous. The creatures that lived here were real, and they wanted to kill her. The other teams competing were real, and they wanted to eliminate her. The scroll her team needed was real, and someone was going to try very hard to stop them from getting it. Focus, she told herself. You're Ino Yamanaka. Genin. Average skills, decent potential, nothing special. Act like it. The first day went smoothly. Team 10's combination of Shikamaru's tactical thinking, Choji's physical strength, and Ino's mental abilities was surprisingly effective. They ambushed a team from Sound, acquired their scroll without much difficulty, and made their way toward the central tower. Then they ran into trouble. The Sound genin they defeated must have had friends. Because suddenly Team 10 was surrounded by 3 additional Sound ninja, all of them stronger than the first group, all of them very, very angry. You made a mistake, the leader said. He had bandages wrapped around most of his face, leaving only one eye visible. Our village doesn't forget. Our village doesn't forgive. Shikamaru assessed the situation with his usual detached calm. We're outmatched. They have us 3-1, and they're at least mid-chunin level. We could run, Choji suggested. They'd catch us. They're faster. So we fight. We'd lose. Ino listened to her teammates debate their options, and she felt something stir inside her. Something old. Something that remembered a time when she hadn't been weak. When she'd had power. Real power. No, she thought. You can't. You'll expose yourself. You'll ruin everything. But if she didn't do something, her team would die. Maybe just a little, she bargained with herself. Just enough to survive. Nothing too obvious. She stepped forward, placing herself between her teammates and the Sound ninja. Ino, what are you doing? Shikamaru hissed. Something stupid, she said. Then she gathered chakra, more than she should have been able to muster, more than any genin had any right to possess, and fired it like a barrage of beams. It was a technique she'd learned in another life, in another world, a simple spell that involves a blast of concentrated mana or chakra in this world. The Sound ninjas went down. All of them. At once. Shikamaru and Choji stared at her with identical expressions of stunned disbelief. What? Shikamaru said slowly. The hell was that? Ino's mind raced. I've been practicing. In secret. Bullshit. Shikamaru. That wasn't a genin technique, Ino. That wasn't even a chunin technique. Where did you learn that? She opened her mouth to lie. To make something up. To continue the charade that had protected her for years. But she was tired. So tired of pretending. I can't tell you, she said quietly. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I swear on my family's honor that I'm not a threat to Konoha. I'm not a traitor or a spy or anything like that. I'm just Ino. I promise. Shikamaru stared at her for a long moment. Then he sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. This is so troublesome. You know we're going to have to talk about this eventually. Eventually, Ino agreed. But not now. Now we need to get to the tower. They gathered their things and kept moving. Nobody mentioned the attack again. Chapter 5. The preliminary rounds of the chunin exams were held inside a cavernous chamber beneath the tower. Naruto stood among the other surviving genin, watching as match after match was called and decided. Some fights were quick, brutal exchanges that ended in seconds. Others dragged on, becoming wars of attrition where the winner was simply whoever collapsed last. He paid attention to all of them. He'd learned long ago that observation was just as valuable as participation. You could learn a lot about a person by watching how they fought, their strengths, their weaknesses, the moments when they hesitated and the moments when they committed. Sasuke's fight was impressive but concerning. His opponent had been formidable, but there was something wrong with Sasuke's chakra. Something dark and twisted that hadn't been there before. Sakura's fight was short and decisive. She'd grown more than Naruto had expected. Shikamaru's fight was entertaining. The lazy genius had won by literally boring his opponent into submission, then tricking her into admitting defeat. And then the board flickered, and new names appeared. Uzumaki Naruto vs Inuzuka Kiba. Naruto allowed himself a small smile. A dog user. Easy enough. He'd faced worse. He dropped into the arena and faced his opponent. Kiba was grinning, all sharp teeth and overconfidence. Finally! I've been waiting to put you in your place, dead last. You sure about that? Naruto asked mildly. What's that supposed to mean? Naruto shrugged. Nothing. Just asking. Kiba's grin widened. You're going down, Uzumaki. You and your stupid pranks and your stupid orange clothes and your stupid... Begin! The proctor shouted. Kiba lunged. And Naruto moved. He'd been holding back for years. Pretending to be slower than he was, weaker than he was, dumber than he was. It had kept him safe. Kept people from asking questions. Kept the ANBU from dragging him away to some underground facility where they could experiment on the demon child to their heart's content. But right now, in this moment, with everyone watching, he couldn't afford to lose. Couldn't afford to be the dead last anymore. If he wanted to achieve his goals, any of his goals, he needed to show the world that Naruto Uzumaki was not to be underestimated. So he stopped holding back. Well, not completely. He wasn't stupid. But enough to end this fight quickly and decisively, and leave absolutely no doubt about the outcome. Kiba's first attack missed by a mile. His second attack missed by slightly less. His third attack connected with a shadow clone that Naruto had created and replaced himself within the space between heartbeats. The real Naruto was behind him. I'm sorry, he said quietly, and then he hit Kiba with a palm strike to the base of the skull that dropped the boy like a sack of potatoes. The arena went silent. Naruto looked up at the observation deck, where the other genin were staring at him with varying expressions of shock, and found Ino Yamanaka's eyes. She was looking at him like she'd never seen him before. Like she was seeing him for the first time. The finals were scheduled for 1 month later. Naruto spent most of that time training, though training was perhaps not the most accurate term. Jiraiya of the Sannin had been assigned as his new teacher. Apparently someone in the village hierarchy had finally decided that the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails needed more than a perpetually late jounin who spent half his time reading porn. Jiraiya was interesting. The man was a legendary ninja. He'd trained the fourth Hokage Y. He'd written best-selling books, even if those books were, technically, pornography. He'd spied on foreign nations, infiltrated enemy strongholds, and faced down some of the most dangerous opponents in the elemental nations. He was also, quite possibly, the most immature person Naruto had ever met. Your chakra control is terrible, Jiraiya announced after their first training session. How have you survived this long? Luck mostly, Naruto said. Luck doesn't explain that move you pulled against the Inuzuka kid. Naruto froze. What do you mean? Don't play dumb. I've been doing this longer than you've been alive, probably both times. Jiraiya's eyes were sharp, suddenly, all traces of his usual lecherous persona gone. That palm strike. That's not Academy Taijutsu. That's not any taijutsu taught in the elemental nations. So where did you learn it? For a long moment, Naruto said nothing. Then, what do you mean, both times? Jiraiya smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. The Toad Sage knows many things, kid. Including things that probably shouldn't be known. You're being cryptic. I'm being accurate. There's a difference. Jiraiya sat down on a nearby rock, gesturing for Naruto to join him. Let me tell you a story. About a boy who died a long time ago, in a world very different from this one. A hero who saved that world from darkness and evil. A hero who... Stop. Naruto's voice was sharp. Harder than he'd intended. Jiraiya raised an eyebrow. Problem? You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? Tell me, kid, what was her name? The elf. The one you couldn't stop thinking about, even at the end. Naruto felt like he'd been punched in the chest. No one knew. No one could know. He'd never told anyone, never written it down, never even spoken her name aloud since he'd been reborn in this world. How could this lecherous old man possibly? Frieren, he said quietly. Her name was Frieren. Jiraiya nodded, his expression softening. I thought so. The toads have long memories, Naruto. Very long memories. Long enough to remember things that most people have forgotten. Long enough to recognize a soul that's lived before. How? Does it matter? It matters to me. Jiraiya sighed. The toads exist in many worlds, kid. They've been around since before humans learned to walk upright. They remember things. And sometimes, rarely, but sometimes, they recognize patterns. Souls that find their way back to the cycle of rebirth. Heroes who are needed again. Naruto processed this information slowly. You're saying reincarnation is real? That I'm not crazy? You're definitely not crazy. Idiotic, maybe. Reckless, almost certainly. But not crazy. Gee, thanks. You're welcome. Jiraiya stood, brushing off his pants. Now, let's talk about your training. If you're going to survive what's coming, you're going to need every advantage you can get. And that means finally learning how to use everything you've been hiding. What do you mean, what's coming? Jiraiya's expression was grim. War, kid. War is coming. And you're going to be right in the middle of it. 1 week before the finals, Naruto had a dream. He was standing in a field of flowers, surrounded by colors he had no names for. The sky was blue, too blue, bluer than any sky had a right to be, and the sun was warm on his face, and somewhere in the distance, birds were singing a song he almost recognized. And she was there. Frieren. She looked exactly as he remembered, silver hair, green eyes, that expression of bored disinterest that hid so much more underneath. She was sitting in the grass, examining some flower or spell or whatever had caught her attention today, and she hadn't noticed him yet. Frieren, he said. She looked up. And smiled. Himmel. You're late. I'm always late. I know. It's very annoying. He walked toward her, each step feeling like it took 1,000 years. The flowers brushed against his legs, soft as silk, and the wind whispered secrets in a language he'd never learned but somehow understood. I miss you, he said. I know. I'm sorry I left you. I know that too. He reached her. Stood over her. Looked down at the face he'd loved for decades, the face that had haunted his dreams and his waking hours and every moment in between. I found you again, he said. Or, I will. I think. Somehow. In this new life. I don't know how, but I know I will. Frieren's smile flickered. Are you sure? No. But I'm going to try anyway. That sounds like you. Does it? Yes. She stood, graceful as always, and took his hand in hers. It sounds exactly like you. Never giving up, even when you should. Never stopping, even when it's hopeless. Always believing that things will work out, somehow. Is that a compliment? It's an observation. He laughed. He couldn't help it. Even in dreams, she could make him laugh. I love you, he said. I should have told you that before I died. I should have told you 1,000 times. I was a coward, and I'm sorry. Frieren's eyes widened. For a moment, just a moment, she looked genuinely surprised. Then she smiled again, soft and sad and full of something he couldn't quite name. You weren't a coward, she said. You were kind. You wanted to protect me from hurting when you were gone. It was foolish and unnecessary, but it was also very, very you. Does that mean you forgive me? There's nothing to forgive. Does that mean you felt the same way? A pause. Long and pregnant with meaning. Find me, Frieren said quietly. In this new life. Find me, and I'll tell you. The dream began to fade, the colors bleeding together, the warmth fading into cold. Wait! Find me, Himmel! And then he woke up. Chapter 6. The chunin exam finals were held in a massive arena in the center of Konoha. Naruto stood among the other finalists, trying to control his breathing, trying not to think about the dream that had haunted him for a week. The crowds were cheering, thousands of people, civilians and ninja alike, all gathered to watch children fight for the privilege of being called chunin. It was barbaric, really. He'd seen worse in his past life, but that didn't make it any less disturbing. The matches were called one by one. Naruto won his first fight against a sand village genin named Temari, using wind manipulation techniques that had her staring at him in shock. His second fight was against Shino Aburaim, and that was harder. The bug user's logical, methodical approach reminded him uncomfortably of certain mages he'd known, but he managed to pull out a victory through sheer unpredictability. And then, just as his third match was about to begin, everything went wrong. The invasion started with a signal. Naruto would later learn the details. The Sand and Sound villages had conspired to attack Konoha during the finals, when its defenses were at their weakest and its leaders were concentrated in one easily targetable location. The plan had been years in the making. It should have succeeded. It almost did. But the thing about plans was that they never survived contact with the enemy. And Naruto Uzumaki was a very difficult enemy to plan around. "Gaara," he said, facing the red-haired boy who stood at the center of the arena, sand swirling around him like a living thing. "You don't have to do this." Gaara's eyes were wild. His mouth was twisted into something that might have been a smile, if smiles could be made of madness and hatred. "You don't understand. You can't understand. I exist only to kill. It's the only thing that proves I'm alive. I understand more than you think. Liar. I'm not lying." Naruto stepped forward, hands raised in what he hoped was a non-threatening gesture. "I know what it's like to be hated. To be feared. To have everyone look at you and see a monster instead of a person. I know what it's like to be alone, Gaara. Trust me. I know." For a moment something flickered in Gaara's eyes. Doubt. Confusion. Something that might have been hope. Then the sand surged, and the moment was gone. "Enough!" Gaara screamed. "I will kill you! I will prove my existence!" The battle began. Fighting Gaara was like fighting a natural disaster. The sand moved with a mind of its own, attacking from every angle, never stopping, never slowing. It was dense enough to stop kunai and shuriken, fast enough to intercept taijutsu strikes, and seemingly limitless in supply. Every time Naruto thought he'd found an opening, the sand was already there, forming walls and spikes and tendrils that sought his destruction with single-minded determination. Himmel had fought demons. Naruto Uzumaki was about to fight a god. The transformation was gradual at first. An arm here. A leg there. Sand armor covering Gaara's body, making him look less like a boy and more like a monster. Then the transformation accelerated, and suddenly Naruto wasn't facing Gaara anymore. He was facing Shikaku, the one-tailed beast. A demon in the truest sense of the word, a creature of pure chakra and malevolence, bound into human form but never truly contained. It roared, and the sound shook the arena to its foundations. It lashed out, and buildings crumbled beneath its fury. And Naruto smiled. "Finally," he said quietly. "A real challenge." The fight that followed would become a legend. People would talk about it for years afterward, the day Naruto Uzumaki summoned Gamabunta, the boss toad, and faced down a tailed beast in single combat. They would talk about the impossible techniques he used, the impossible odds he overcame, the impossible victory he achieved through nothing more than determination and courage. What they didn't know, what they couldn't know, was that Naruto wasn't really fighting alone. Somewhere deep inside him, in that place where the nine tails lurked behind bars of chakra and sealing script, a conversation was taking place. "You've fought demons before," the fox said. It wasn't a question. "Yes." "In another life." "Yes." "Interesting." A pause. "This one is weak. Shikaku has always been the runt of the litter. But he's still a tailed beast. You can't defeat him without my power." "I know." "You're not afraid? Of using your power?" "No." "Of losing myself to it?" "A little." The fox laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "You're smarter than I gave you credit for, brat. Most hosts just take what I offer without thinking about the consequences. I'm not most hosts." "No. You're not." Another pause, longer this time. "Very well. I'll lend you my power. But remember, everything has a price. One day, I will collect. I'll worry about that when it happens." Famous last words. The red chakra flooded his system again, but this time, he was in control. This time, he shaped it instead of letting it shape him. This time, he used it as a tool instead of a crutch. He leaped from Gamabunta's head, drawing on power that wasn't entirely his own, and struck Gaara with enough force to shatter mountains. The one tail fell. And when the dust cleared, Naruto was standing over an unconscious Gaara, breathing hard but alive. The invasion had failed. Konoha had survived. But nothing would ever be the same. Chapter 7. The third Hokage was dead. Naruto stood at the funeral, surrounded by hundreds of mourners dressed in black, and tried to feel something. Sadness, maybe? Anger. Loss. The old man had been one of the few people in this village who had ever shown him kindness. He deserved tears. But Naruto couldn't cry. The third Hokage had been kind, yes. But he'd also been distant. Absent. Too busy with the responsibilities of leadership to truly see the boy he was supposed to be protecting. Naruto understood. He'd been a leader himself, once, and he knew how easy it was to lose sight of individuals when you were trying to save everyone, but understanding didn't make it hurt any less. You did well, a voice said from beside him. Naruto turned to find Jiraiya standing there, his expression uncharacteristically solemn. Did I? You saved the village. You stopped Gaara. You. People still died. The Hokage still died. I wasn't fast enough, or strong enough, or… Stop. Jiraiya's voice was sharp. Commanding. Naruto fell silent. Listen to me, the old sage said. I've lived a long time. I've seen things you can't imagine, or maybe you can, actually, which is kind of the problem. But trust me when I say this, you can't save everyone. It's not possible. No matter how strong you are, no matter how fast, no matter how clever, some people are going to die. That's not your fault. That's just life. It doesn't feel that way. It never does. Jiraiya put a hand on Naruto's shoulder. The guilt you're feeling right now? It means you care. And caring is good. But don't let it consume you. Don't let it become all you are. You've got a whole life ahead of you, a second life, which is more than most people get, and you can't spend it drowning in what-ifs. Naruto looked down at the grave marker being lowered into the ground. He was a good man. He was. And he would want you to keep going. To keep fighting. To keep being that ridiculously stubborn kid who refuses to give up even when the world is falling apart around him. You make it sound so simple. It's not simple. It's never simple. But it is necessary. Jiraiya squeezed his shoulder, then let go. Come on. We've got training to do. Now? At a funeral? The dead don't need us to mourn them. They need us to keep living. To keep making the world better. To honor their memory by being the best versions of ourselves we can be. Jiraiya started walking away, then paused and looked back. Besides, there's a woman out there somewhere who's probably waiting for you. Don't you think you should get strong enough to be worth her time? Naruto's heart stuttered. How do you? Toad's kid. Long memories, remember? A hint of a smile. Now come on. We've got work to do. Elsewhere in the village, Aino Yamanaka was dealing with her own aftermath. The invasion had been terrifying. The chaos, the violence, the constant fear that at any moment she might turn a corner and find herself face to face with an enemy she couldn't defeat. But it wasn't the invasion itself that haunted her. It was what she'd seen during the invasion. Naruto Uzumaki, wreathed in red chakra, facing down a tailed beast like it was just another obstacle to overcome. Naruto Uzumaki, moving with a grace and precision that no genin should possess, using techniques that looked familiar in ways she couldn't quite explain. Naruto Uzumaki, standing victorious over a god made flesh, looking for all the world like a hero out of legend. Looking, in fact, exactly like someone she used to know. No, she told herself firmly. That's impossible. He can't be. He can't be. But the seed had been planted. And no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't uproot it. The recovery from the invasion took weeks. Buildings had to be rebuilt. Defenses had to be reinforced. The dead had to be mourned, the injured had to be healed, and life had to slowly, painfully return to normal. Ino threw herself into the work. It was easier than thinking. Easier than remembering. She helped clear rubble, she ran supplies, she used her medical training, cobbled together from memories of another life where healing magic was commonplace, to assist at the hospital. She did not think about Naruto Uzumaki. She did not think about the way he moved during the fight with Gaara. She did not think about the expression on his face when he'd stood over his fallen opponent. Tired, yes, but also something else. She absolutely, positively, 100% did not think about the moment when their eyes had met across the ruined arena, and she'd felt something stir in her chest that had been dormant for a very, very long time. She didn't think about any of that. She just worked. And if her hands shook sometimes, or if her eyes burned with tears she refused to shed, or if she lay awake at night staring at the ceiling and wondering, well, That was her burden to bear. Just like always. Chapter 8. 3 months after the invasion, life in Konoha had settled into a new normal. Tsunade Senju had been found and convinced, being a generous term for what actually happened, to become the 5th Hokage. The village was healing, slowly but surely. Teams were going on missions again. The academy was accepting new students. The sounds of construction had given way to the sounds of everyday life. Naruto was stronger than he'd been before. Jiraiya's training had pushed him to limits he hadn't known he had. Physically, mentally, and spiritually. The old sage had forced him to confront things he'd been avoiding for years: his past, his fears, his feelings about the life he'd lost and the life he'd gained. "You can't be Himmel forever," Jiraiya had said one day, after a particularly brutal training session. "And you can't be just Naruto either. You need to figure out who you are now. Who you want to be. Who you're going to become. And who's that? That's not for me to answer, kid. That's your journey." It was annoyingly cryptic, as most of Jiraiya's advice tended to be. But it was also true. Naruto had spent so long either hiding from his past or being consumed by it that he never stopped to consider what he actually wanted from this life. Well, that wasn't entirely true. He wanted to find her. "Find me," she'd said in his dream. "Find me, and I'll tell you." But how? How could he possibly find one specific soul in a world full of billions of people? Reincarnation didn't exactly come with a tracking device. He didn't even know if she's still alive or have been reborn, in this world, or somewhere else. He didn't know anything. Except he kept thinking about Ino Yamanaka. He'd noticed her watching him lately. During missions, during training, during the rare moments of downtime when the Rookie 9 gathered together for meals or celebrations or just to remind themselves that they were all still alive. She watched him like she was trying to figure something out. Like he was a puzzle she couldn't quite solve. It should have made him nervous. It did make him nervous. But there was something else too. Something he couldn't quite name. A pull, like gravity, drawing his attention to her whenever she was nearby. Her hair was the wrong color. Her eyes were the wrong shape. Her voice, her mannerisms, her everything, all wrong, nothing like the person he remembered. But sometimes, when she wasn't paying attention, her expression would shift. Just for a second. And in that second, she would look so much like her that Naruto's heart would ache. He told himself it was just wishful thinking. He told himself he was projecting. He told himself a lot of things. He didn't believe any of them. The mission that changed everything started like any other mission. Team 7 and Team 10 had been assigned to work together on a B-rank escort mission, protecting a merchant caravan through a disputed border region where bandit activity had been on the rise. It was the kind of mission that was becoming increasingly common as the village struggled to rebuild its economy and reputation. The team set out at dawn, the early morning light casting long shadows across the village gates. Naruto fell into step beside Sasuke and Sakura, trying to ignore the way his eyes kept drifting to where Ino was walking with her own teammates. She was laughing at something Choji had said, her head thrown back, her smile bright and genuine. She never used to laugh like that, he thought, then caught himself. No. Stop it. She's not her. She can't be her. Naruto, Sasuke said quietly. Yeah? You're staring. Naruto jerked his gaze away. I wasn't staring. I was observing. In case of enemy attack. Sasuke raised an eyebrow. Right. I was. Sure you were. Sakura, walking on Naruto's other side, leaned in with a knowing smirk. Ino's pretty, isn't she? I wasn't. She's not. I mean, she's fine, I guess, but... You're blushing. I am not. You definitely are, Sasuke said. I hate both of you. No you don't. Naruto grumbled something under his breath and walked faster, putting distance between himself and his insufferable teammates. Somewhere behind him, he could swear he heard Ino laugh again. The ambush came 3 days into the mission. They were passing through a narrow canyon, the kind of terrain that any competent tactician would have avoided, except the alternative routes would have added weeks to the journey, when the first arrow flew. Naruto caught it out of the air without thinking. The arrow was followed by a dozen more, then by kunai, then by enemies dropping from the canyon walls like deadly rain. Circle formation! Shikamaru shouted. Protect the civilians! The 6 genin moved smoothly into position, forming a defensive ring around the merchant caravan. Naruto found himself standing shoulder to shoulder with Ino, their backs to the wagons, enemies closing in from all sides. You know, she said conversationally, this is not how I expected today to go. Me either. Any brilliant plans? Naruto assessed the situation with practiced ease. 37 hostiles. Mix of bandits and missing nin, nothing above chunin level. The canyon walls limit their mobility, But also ours. Our best bet is to... Wait. Ino turned to look at him, her expression sharp. How do you know there are exactly 37? Naruto froze. He'd done it again. Letting the mask slip, revealing too much of what lay beneath. I counted. Nobody counts that fast. I do. Naruto. An enemy lunged at them, and the conversation was cut short by the necessity of survival. The fight was brutal. Naruto had been in countless battles across 2 lifetimes, but this one was different. He wasn't fighting alone, and he wasn't fighting for glory or justice or any abstract ideal. He was fighting to protect the people beside him, his teammates, his friends, the innocent civilians cowering in the wagons behind them. It made him sloppy. He took a kunai to the shoulder trying to shield Sakura. He got clipped by a fire jutsu trying to draw attention away from Choji. He pushed himself harder than he should have, used techniques that revealed more than he wanted to reveal, because the alternative was letting someone die on his watch. By the time the last enemy fell, Naruto was barely standing. You're injured, Ino said, suddenly beside him. Her hands were already glowing with medical chakra, standard first aid, nothing fancy, but more than a genin should know how to do. I'm fine. You have a kunai sticking out of your shoulder. I've had worse. That's not reassuring. She reached for the kunai, and he instinctively flinched away. Naruto. Let me help you. Something in her voice made him pause. It wasn't concern, exactly, or not just concern. There was something else underneath. Something old. Something almost like... Okay, he said quietly. She worked in silence, removing the kunai with professional efficiency and healing the wound with gentle chakra. Her hands were warm against his skin, and her expression was focused, intent. Like this was the most important thing in the world. You're good at this, he said. I've been practicing. I didn't know Yamanakas did medical jutsu. We don't. Usually. I'm branching out. Branching out. Yes. She finished with the wound and started examining him for other injuries. You fight differently than other people. What do you mean? I mean you fight like you've done this 1,000 times before. Like you expect people to try to kill you and you already know exactly how to stop them. Naruto's heart was pounding. This was dangerous territory. He should deflect and change the subject, play the fool like he always did. Instead, he found himself saying, Maybe I have. Ino's hand stilled on his arm. She looked up at him, her blue eyes searching his face for something. Truth, maybe? Or recognition. What does that mean? She asked quietly. I don't know. He lied. I don't know what anything means anymore. They stared at each other for a long moment. The sounds of the aftermath, injured being tended, enemies being secured, civilians being reassured, faded into background noise. Then Shikamaru called out that they needed to move, and the moment shattered like glass. We should go, Ino said, stepping back. Yeah. We should. They rejoined their teams without another word. But something had changed between them. Some invisible barrier had cracked, if not broken. And Naruto couldn't stop thinking about the way her eyes had looked in that moment, hopeful, and so very, very familiar. Part 2, Closing the Distance. Chapter 9. The mission continued without further incident. They delivered the caravan to its destination, collected the payment, and began the long trek back to Konoha. The 6 genin fell into an easy rhythm, traveling during the day, making camp at night, taking turns on watch. It was during one of these night watches that everything started to unravel. Naruto was sitting by the fire, half watching the darkness beyond the circle of light, when Ino emerged from her tent. Can't sleep? He asked quietly. Nightmares. She sat down across from him, wrapping her blanket tighter around her shoulders. You. Same. They sat in silence for a while, the fire crackling between them. The forest around them was alive with small sounds, insects chirping, leaves rustling, the distant hoot of an owl. Can I ask you something? Ino said finally. Depends on what it is. During the fight. You said you've done this 1,000 times before. What did you mean? Naruto considered his options. Lie like he always did. Deflect. Change the subject. Maintain the mask that had protected him for years. But he was tired. So tired of pretending. What if I told you? He said slowly. That this isn't my first life? Ino went very still. What do you mean? I mean, I remember things. Things from before. Another world, another time. Another me. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Sounds crazy, right? No. Her voice was barely a whisper. It doesn't sound crazy at all. Naruto looked at her. Really looked. saw the tension in her shoulders, the fear in her eyes, the way her hands were clenched so tightly in her lap that her knuckles had gone white. Ino, what was it like? She asked. Your other life? I was a hero. Or people called me one anyway. I fought demons. I saved the world. I had friends, people I loved more than anything. His throat tightened. And then I got old, and I died, and I woke up here. That sounds beautiful. It was. Mostly. He hesitated, then added. I was in love, too. With someone I couldn't have. Someone who lived forever, who would outlast me by centuries. I never told her how I felt, because I was afraid it would hurt her too much when I was gone. Ino made a sound, half laugh, half sob. That's very noble and stupid. Story of my life. Another silence. Longer this time. The fire had burned down to embers, casting the clearing in shadows. Her name, Ino said finally. The one you loved. What was it? Naruto's heart stopped. He shouldn't answer. He shouldn't reveal this last, most precious secret. He shouldn't give away the piece of himself that he'd guarded so carefully for so long. But something in her voice, something desperate, something hopeful, made him speak anyway. Frieren, he said. Her name was Frieren. The silence that followed was absolute. Complete. A void of sound and sensation that seemed to stretch on forever. Then Ino whispered, Himmel. And Naruto's world shattered. Chapter 10. What did you say? Naruto's voice sounded strange to his own ears. Hollow. Distant. Like it was coming from somewhere far away. Ino was staring at him with an expression he couldn't decipher. Fear, maybe? Or hope? Or something in between. I said Himmel. She repeated. That was your name. How do you know that? Because I remember it. She was crying now, tears streaming down her face, though she didn't seem to notice. I remember you. I remember everything. Naruto couldn't breathe. He was frozen in place. Couldn't do anything but stare at the girl across the fire from him and try to reconcile what she was saying with what he knew to be true. That's impossible, he said. You can't be, you don't look anything like. Neither do you. She laughed, high and broken. You used to have blue hair. And you were taller. And you smiled more. But your eyes, God, your eyes. They're exactly the same. How did I not see it before? Frieren. Don't. She held up a hand, stopping him. Don't call me that. I'm not. I don't know if I can. She trailed off, her whole body shaking. Naruto moved before he could stop himself. He was around the fire and kneeling in front of her in an instant, his hands hovering awkwardly in the space between them, not quite touching. It's okay, he said. It's okay. I know. I understand. Take your time. How long have you known? Since I was born. Or since I was old enough to understand what I was remembering, anyway. It took a few years to sort through everything. Years. She laughed again, but it was steadier this time. I've known since I was 4. 4 years old, with 1,000 years of memories crashing down on me. Do you have any idea how terrifying that is? Actually, yes. I do. Right. Of course you do. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, leaving streaks of dirt on her cheeks. I can't believe you're here. I can't believe you're real. I could say the same thing. They stared at each other, two souls who had known each other across lifetimes, finally face to face again. I never told you, Naruto said quietly. Before. I never said the words. I was too scared, too worried about hurting you too. Stupid. Too stupid, yes. But I loved you. I loved you so much it physically hurt sometimes. And I've loved you for 12 years in this life, even though I didn't know if you existed anymore, even though I thought I might never find you again. Ino's breath caught. Himmel. Naruto. He corrected gently. My name is Naruto now. Just like your name is Ino. We're different people than we used to be. We've lived different lives. I don't know if what we had before can translate into what we are now. But you want to find out? More than anything. She reached out, slowly, and took his hand in hers. Her fingers were warm. Calloused from training, smaller than they should have been, shaped all wrong for the spells she used to cast. But the grip was exactly the same. Strong. Certain. Unshakable. I never told you either, she said. I was scared too. I thought if I admitted how much I loved you, it would make losing you even worse. So I pretended I didn't care. I pretended you were just my friend, just my companion, just another human whose life would flicker out while I went on forever. Did it work? No. The tears were falling again. It didn't work at all. When you died, I felt like I'd lost everything. Like the sun had gone out, and I was just drifting. In the dark. Alone. You're not alone anymore. No. She agreed. I'm not. They sat there for a long time, hands intertwined, watching the embers die. Somewhere in the distance, a bird sang the first notes of dawn. Chapter 11. The other genin noticed something had changed. They weren't blind, the way Naruto and Ino kept gravitating toward each other, the meaningful looks they exchanged when they thought no one was watching, the soft smiles that replaced their usual bickering. Did something happen? Sakura asked Ino during a rest stop. What do you mean? With you and Naruto. You're being weird. Weirder than usual, anyway. Ino considered her options. The truth was impossible. No one would believe her, and even if they did, it would raise questions she wasn't ready to answer. But she also didn't want to lie. Not anymore. Not about this. We talked, she said finally. Last night. About things. Things. Yeah. Sakura's eyes narrowed. What kind of things? The kind I'm not ready to talk about yet. Ino met her friend's gaze steadily. I promise I'll tell you eventually. But right now I just need time to figure stuff out. For a moment, it looked like Sakura was going to push. Then she sighed, her expression softening. Fine. But if he breaks your heart, I'll punch him so hard he'll see stars for a week. Noted. And if you break his heart, I'll do the same to you. Ino blinked. You care about Naruto? Of course I do. He's annoying and loud, and he never shuts up about ramen. But he's also my teammate. My friend. Sakura smiled. He deserves to be happy too. Even if happy means getting together with my ex-rival for Sasuke's affection. I was never really interested in Sasuke. Ino admitted. I know. Sakura's smile widened. I figured that out a while ago. You're not exactly subtle when you're faking. How? Later. Sakura stood, brushing off her pants. Break's over. Let's get moving. Ino watched her friend walk away, feeling something warm bloom in her chest. Maybe she didn't have to hide everything after all. Meanwhile, Naruto was having a similar conversation with Shikamaru. You're different, the Nara heir observed. Less annoying. Is that supposed to be a compliment? Take it however you want. Shikamaru studied him with those sharp, analytical eyes that missed nothing. Ino's different too. Less shallow and more real. Naruto didn't respond. He didn't know how. Look, Shikamaru said, lowering his voice. I don't know what's going on between you two. And honestly, I don't care. Relationships are troublesome. But Ino's my teammate, which means I have a vested interest in her not being screwed up. I'm not going to screw her up. You'd better not. Because if you hurt her... Shikamaru. Naruto turned to face him fully. I would die before I hurt her. Literally. I've already done it once, and I'd do it again without hesitation. Something shifted in Shikamaru's expression. What does that mean? It means exactly what it sounds like. Naruto resumed walking. Now come on. We're burning daylight. Shikamaru stared after him for a long moment, his genius brain processing data points and drawing conclusions. Then he shook his head and followed. Some mysteries, he decided, were better left unsolved. Chapter 12. The return to Konoha marked the beginning of a new chapter. Naruto and Ino didn't immediately become a couple. They were too smart for that, too aware of the complications. Instead, they did something harder. Something braver. They became friends. Real friends. Not the kind who pretended to be rivals or barely acknowledged each other's existence. The kind who talked. Who shared. Who gradually, carefully, allowed each other to see behind the masks they'd worn for so long. It started with training. Your taijutsu is still terrible, Ino observed during one of their sparring sessions. I mean, it's better than it used to be, but... I was trained as a swordsman. Naruto protested. Punching and kicking was always secondary. Well, you don't have a sword now. So maybe adapt? He grumbled but took her advice, incorporating more striking techniques into his repertoire. In exchange, he helped her with strategy, the kind of big-picture tactical thinking that had made Himmel such an effective leader. You think too small, he told her after watching her plan out a hypothetical mission. You're focused on the immediate objectives, but you're not considering the second and third-order effects. Is that a critique? It's an observation. He sketched out an alternative approach in the dirt. See, if you adjust your positioning here, you create an opening here, which lets you exploit this weakness here, which cascades into... Okay. She held up her hands in surrender. I get it. Think bigger. Think interconnected. Everything affects everything else. It was good advice. It was also, Ino realized, exactly the kind of advice Himmel used to give during their long journey to defeat the Demon King. Some things, apparently, transcended lifetimes. They also talked about the past. Not always. Not constantly. But sometimes, late at night or during quiet moments between missions, they would share memories. Pieces of their old lives that they'd never been able to tell anyone else. Do you remember the time Aizen accidentally destroyed that tavern? Naruto asked one evening, as they sat on the Hokage monument watching the sun set. The one where he sneezed and punched through the wall? That's the one. Ino laughed. The look on his face. He was so embarrassed. He tried to fix it himself, remember? Made it worse. Much worse. She leaned her head against his shoulder. I miss him. I miss all of them. Me too. Do you think they're out there somewhere? Hyder and Aizen? Reincarnated like us? Naruto considered the question. I don't know. I'd like to think so. But even if they're not, even if this is it, just you and me, I'm okay with that. I'm more than okay, actually. If you say happy, I'll punch you. I was going to say grateful. Oh. She sat up slightly, looking at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. That's surprisingly mature of you. I'm full of surprises. Clearly. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars emerge one by one. I never thought I'd find you, Ino said quietly. I'd given up hoping. I'd decided that I was going to live this life alone, with just my memories for company, and that would have to be enough. But it's not enough. Is it? No. She took his hand, intertwining their fingers. It's not. And now that I've found you again, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to be Ino and Frieren at the same time. You don't have to be both. Naruto squeezed her hand. Just be you. Whoever that is. We'll figure out the rest together. Together, she echoed. I like the sound of that. So do I. 6 months passed. The relationship between them deepened, layer by layer, like sediment settling at the bottom of a river. They learned each other's quirks and habits, the new ones, the ones that belonged to Naruto and Ino rather than Himmel and Frieren. Naruto learned that Ino bit her lip when she was concentrating. That she had a weakness for sweet dumplings that she tried to hide. That she hummed softly to herself when she thought no one was listening, little snatches of melody that sounded almost like songs from another world. Ino learned that Naruto talked in his sleep, long, rambling conversations with people who weren't there. That he got homesick sometimes, even though he wasn't sure which home he was missing. That he still practiced swordsmanship in the early morning hours, using a wooden blade to trace patterns from a life that no longer existed. They learned, also, that they fit together in ways they hadn't expected. Not the ways they had before. They were different people now, with different bodies and different experiences and different ways of seeing the world. But new ways. Better ways, maybe? Ino's sharp wit complemented Naruto's stubborn optimism. His tactical mind balanced her strategic gaps. She made him think, he made her feel. They were good for each other. Everyone could see it. So are you two together or what? Sakura asked one day, with characteristic bluntness. Naruto and Ino exchanged glances. Define together, Naruto said. Oh my god! You're impossible. What he means, Ino said smoothly, is that we're taking things slow. Getting to know each other. Not rushing into anything. You spend every free moment together. That's called friendship, Sakura. Uh-huh. Sakura crossed her arms. And the hand-holding? Friendly hand-holding. The stargazing? Friendly stargazing. The way he looks at you like you hung the moon? Ino paused. Turned to Naruto. Do you look at me like I hung the moon? I mean, maybe? A little? Huh. She considered this. That's kind of sweet, actually. Oh my god! Sakura groaned. You're both hopeless. Absolutely hopeless. She stormed off, muttering about oblivious idiots who couldn't recognize love if it bit them. Naruto looked at Ino. Ino looked at Naruto. She has a point, Ino said. She does. We should probably talk about this. Probably. They didn't talk about it. Not yet. But the seed had been planted. Chapter 13. The thing about building something new was that the old foundations were still there. Naruto tried not to think about it too much. He focused on the present, on Ino as she was now, on the life they were creating together. But sometimes, late at night, when the memories felt more real than reality, he couldn't help wondering. Did she love him? Naruto Uzumaki, loudmouth ninja of Konoha? Or did she love Himmel? The hero she traveled with for decades, the man who died holding her hand? Were they the same person? Was he the same person? The questions haunted him, eroding his confidence little by little. Ino noticed the change, of course. She noticed everything. It was her job, as a Yamanaka and as someone who'd spent centuries learning to read people. And what she noticed was Naruto pulling away. Not physically, but emotionally. Like he was building walls again. Walls she thought they'd torn down together. "What's wrong?" she asked one day, after he'd been particularly quiet. "Nothing. Naruto. It's nothing. Really. You're lying." "I'm not. Your left eye twitches when you lie. It's been doing that for the past 3 minutes." He stared at her, caught. Then he sighed and looked away. "I've been thinking," he said quietly. About us. About what this is. What it means." Ino felt something cold settle in her stomach. "What do you mean?" "I mean..." He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "When you look at me, what do you see? Do you see Naruto? Or do you see Himmel? Because sometimes I'm not sure. Sometimes I don't know if what we have is real, or if it's just echo. Residue from another life that won't let go. That's... And I keep wondering," he continued, not letting her interrupt, "if maybe you'd be better off without me. Without this. You could find someone new, someone who doesn't come with all this baggage. Someone you could love cleanly, without all the complicated history." "Naruto, stop. I'm serious, Ino. I don't want you to be with me out of obligation, or nostalgia, or because you feel like you have to. I want you to be happy. Even if that means..." "Stop." The word came out louder than she intended. Harder. It echoed through the training ground, startling birds from nearby trees. Naruto stared at her, surprised. "Listen to me," Ino said, her voice shaking with emotion. "I am not with you out of obligation. I am not with you because of nostalgia. I am with you because you're you. Because you make me laugh, and you make me think, and you make me feel things I thought I'd buried 1,000 years ago. But I'm not finished." She stepped closer, invading his space, forcing him to look at her. "Yes, I loved Himmel. I loved him with everything I had, and when he died, I thought I would never recover. But Himmel is dead. He's gone. And you know what? I've made my peace with that. I've mourned him. I've moved on. Then what is this? Between us? This is new." She grabbed his hands, gripping them tightly. "This is you and me, Naruto and Ino, building something that's never existed before. Is there history between us? Yes. Does that history inform who we are and how we relate to each other? Of course. But that doesn't make what we have any less real. It makes it more real, because we understand each other in ways that no one else ever could." Naruto's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "You really believe that?" "I really believe it." She reached up and cupped his face in her hands. "I love you, Naruto Uzumaki. Not because you used to be Himmel. But because you're you. The loudest, stubbornest, most annoyingly optimistic person I've ever met. And I wouldn't change a single thing about you." A tear escaped, tracking down his cheek. "I love you too. I've loved you for, God, I don't even know how long anymore. Lifetimes. Centuries. Forever. Then stop trying to push me away. Stop trying to protect me from something I don't need protection from." She smiled, soft and fierce all at once. "I'm not going anywhere. Not this time." He kissed her. It wasn't their first kiss. They'd shared a few tentative ones over the past months, careful and exploratory, but this was different. This was a declaration. A commitment. A promise sealed with breath and touch, and the overwhelming certainty that this was exactly where they were supposed to be. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Naruto rested his forehead against hers. "I'm sorry," he said. "For doubting. For pulling away. Apology accepted. But if you do it again, I will actually punch you." Noted. They stood there for a long moment, holding each other, letting the warmth of connection chase away the cold of doubt. The road ahead was still uncertain. There were still questions to answer, challenges to face, a whole future to build. But they would face it together. That was enough. Chapter 14. The problem with hidden truths was that they had a way of coming to light. Naruto and Ino had become increasingly comfortable with each other, too comfortable, perhaps. They'd fallen into old habits, slipping into references and in-jokes that made no sense in this world, using pet names and phrases that belonged to another time. It was only a matter of time before someone noticed. The mission was supposed to be simple. Team 7 and Team 10, working together again on a B-rank escort job. Protect a delegation of diplomats traveling from Konoha to the Land of Iron for a summit. Standard stuff, low risk, moderate pay, good experience for genin who were clearly ready for harder assignments. The trouble started 3 days in. They were ambushed in a mountain pass, enemy ninja, skilled and organized, clearly targeting the diplomats rather than the escort team. The fighting was intense, chaotic, The kind of running battle where one mistake could get everyone killed. Naruto fought like his life depended on it. Because it did. Because Ino's life depended on it. He'd lost her once. He refused to lose her again. The problem was, fighting that hard meant fighting smart. And fighting smart meant using techniques and tactics that a 12-year-old genin had no business knowing. At one point, he found himself back-to-back with Sasuke, surrounded by enemies, with Ino somewhere behind them protecting the diplomats. Cover left, Naruto said, already moving. I'll take right. We need to create a corridor for the civilians to retreat through. How do you know? Just trust me. They moved in sync, carving through the enemy ranks with efficiency that bordered on impossible. Naruto's taijutsu was a blur of precise strikes, each one targeted at vulnerable points that dropped opponents without wasted motion. Sasuke's ninjutsu provided covering fire, keeping the distant enemies at bay while Naruto handled the close quarters work. Behind them, Ino had organized the others into a defensive formation, her voice carrying commands that were obeyed without question. Shikamaru, shadow bind the ones on the ridge. Sakura, get the diplomats into that cave. Choji, with me, we're providing the rear guard. The retreat happened smoothly, almost too smoothly. Within minutes, the attacking force had been either neutralized or driven off, and the Konoha ninja were safely behind cover with their charges unharmed. In the aftermath, as adrenaline faded and reality set back in, Naruto realized what he'd done. And who had seen him do it. What the hell was that? Sasuke's voice was quiet. Dangerous. The voice of someone who just had their worldview fundamentally challenged, and wasn't happy about it. What do you mean? Don't play stupid. I've trained with you for over a year. I know what you're capable of. The Uchiha's eyes narrowed. That wasn't it. That wasn't anywhere close. Naruto said nothing. You were holding back. Sasuke continued. This whole time. Every sparring match, every mission, every fight. You've been hiding your real abilities. Still nothing. Why? The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implications. Naruto considered his options. Lying would be easy, he'd been doing it for years, after all. He could deflect, distract, play the fool until Sasuke gave up and left him alone. But he was tired. So tired of hiding. And maybe it was time to trust someone new. If I tell you, he said slowly, you have to promise not to freak out. I don't freak out. You freak out all the time. You're emotionally unstable and you have revenge fantasies about your brother. Sasuke's eye twitched. That's not. Promise me, Sasuke. Promise me that whatever I tell you, you won't do anything stupid until you've heard the whole story. A long pause. Then, grudgingly. Fine. I promise. Okay. Naruto took a deep breath. This is going to sound crazy. But please, just listen. And then, for the second time in his life, Naruto told someone the truth. Sasuke's reaction was not what Naruto expected. He'd anticipated disbelief. Anger, maybe? Demands for proof, declarations that Naruto was lying, possibly some shouting about how stupid this all was. Instead, Sasuke was quiet. Processing. Reincarnation, he said finally. Yes. You lived before. Another world, another life. Yes. And Ino. She's the same. We knew each other then. We found each other again now. Sasuke stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, a strange expression crossed his face. Something that might have been envy, or understanding, or just exhaustion. That explains a lot, he said. It does. The way you fight. The way you think. The way you look at her sometimes, like she's the only thing in the world that matters. Sasuke shook his head. I thought you were just weird. Turns out you're actually ancient. I'm not that old. You're old enough. A pause. Does anyone else know? Jiraiya figured it out. Something about the toads having long memories. Of course he did. Sasuke was quiet for another moment, then said, I'm not going to tell anyone. Naruto blinked. You're not? No. This is your secret. Yours and Ino's. It's not my place to share it. I thank you, Sasuke. That means a lot. Don't get sentimental. But there was a faint smile on Sasuke's face, the first genuine smile Naruto had seen from him in months. This doesn't change anything between us. You're still an idiot, and I'm still going to surpass you. Wouldn't have it any other way. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the weight of shared secrets creating an unexpected bond. One more question, Sasuke said eventually. Yeah? In your other life, were you happy? Naruto thought about it. About the battles and the losses and the long years of struggle. About the friends he'd made and the friends he'd buried. About Frieren, and the love he'd never spoken aloud until it was too late. Mostly, he said. Not always. But mostly, yeah. I was happy. Good. Sasuke stood, stretching. That's good. He walked away without another word, leaving Naruto alone with his thoughts. The secret was spreading. More people knew now. The walls he'd built were crumbling, one by one. And somehow, that didn't feel as terrifying as he'd expected. Chapter 15. 6 months after Sasuke learned the truth, everything fell apart. It started, as these things often did, with a mission. A joint operation between multiple teams, targeting a suspected Akatsuki hideout. High risk, high reward, the kind of mission that only the best ninja were assigned to. Naruto and Ino were both selected. So were Sasuke, Sakura, Shikamaru, and several jounin including Kakashi and Asuma. They set out at dawn, tension thick in the air. The hideout was a trap. They knew it was a trap, they'd expected it to be a trap, but knowing and being prepared were two different things. The Akatsuki members who confronted them were stronger than anticipated, their abilities more devastating than any intelligence had suggested. The battle was chaos. Naruto fought with everything he had, holding nothing back. There was no point in hiding anymore, survival trumped secrecy. He burned through chakra reserves that shouldn't exist, used techniques that hadn't been seen in this world for millennia, and still it wasn't enough. Asuma fell first. Naruto saw it happen from across the battlefield, saw the blade pierce the jounin's chest, saw the man crumple, saw Shikamaru's face contort with grief and rage. No! Ino's scream cut through the chaos. She was running toward Asuma, medical chakra already blazing in her hands, but she was too far away. They all were. Naruto moved. He didn't think. Didn't plan. Just moved, faster than he'd ever moved before, fueled by desperation and love and the absolute refusal to watch someone he cared about die. He reached Ino just as the second Akatsuki member struck. The blade meant for her heart went through his instead. Pain. Incredible, overwhelming pain. The kind that blanked out everything else, that reduced the universe to a single point of screaming agony. Naruto collapsed, dimly aware of Ino catching him, of her voice calling his name, of the sounds of battle continuing around them. Naruto! Naruto, stay with me! He tried to speak. Couldn't. The words wouldn't form. There was blood in his mouth, iron and bitter, and his vision was going dark at the edges. Not again, he thought. I'm not dying again. I can't. I won't leave her again. You idiot! Ino was crying, her hands pressed against his wound, green chakra flickering weakly. Why did you do that? Why do you always have to be the hero? Because. The words came out garbled, but he forced them anyway. Because you're worth protecting. I don't need protecting. I need you. The fox, Naruto realized. I need the fox. He reached inward, toward that place where the nine tails lurked behind its seal. You're dying, the beast observed. Again. Help me. Why should I? Your death sets me free. No, it doesn't. The seal will trap you forever. A pause. Consideration. You're right, the fox admitted. The fourth was clever. Even in death, his seal holds. Then help me. Please. Another pause. Longer this time. There will be a cost, the fox said finally. There is always a cost. Are you prepared to pay it? Naruto thought about Ino. About the life they were building together. About all the things they hadn't done yet, the years they hadn't lived, the love they hadn't fully explored. Yes. Then so be it. Red chakra flooded his system. The wound in his chest began to close, tissue knitting together with unnatural speed. The darkness at the edge of his vision retreated, replaced by burning crimson light. Naruto gasped, lungs filling with air, heart pounding with renewed vigor. What? Ino stared at him, shocked. How? Later. He pushed himself up, ignoring her protests. We have to finish this. The battle ended. The Akatsuki members retreated, having achieved whatever mysterious objective had brought them there. Asuma survived, barely, thanks to Ino and Sakura's combined medical efforts. The casualties were lighter than they had any right to be, given the power differential. But the cost. Naruto felt it immediately. Something was different. Something had changed in the balance between him and the fox. You owe me. The beast whispered in the back of his mind. When the time comes, I will collect. I know. Do you? Do you really understand what you've agreed to? I understand that Ino is alive. That our friends are alive. That's all that matters. Foolish mortal. You haven't changed at all. Maybe not. But maybe that wasn't such a bad thing. Chapter 16. The aftermath of the failed Akatsuki mission was grim. Asuma was in the hospital, his condition stable but serious. Several other ninja had been injured. Morale was low, and whispers of fear spread through the village like wildfire. Naruto barely noticed any of it. He was too focused on Ino. She hadn't left his side since the battle ended. She'd stayed with him through the debriefing, through the medical examinations, through the long night that followed. She was there when he woke from nightmares, there when the phantom pain flared in his chest, there when he couldn't shake the memory of how close he'd come to losing everything. "You scared me," she said quietly, one evening when they were alone. "When you went down, when I thought you were dying. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Just don't do it again. I can't promise that." "I know," she sighed, leaning against him. "That's the worst part. I know you'll always throw yourself in front of danger to protect the people you love. It's who you are. Who you've always been. Would you want me any other way?" "No. But I reserve the right to be angry about it." "That's fair." They sat in silence for a while, wrapped in each other's presence. "The fox helped me," Naruto said eventually. "That's how I survived. It healed me." Ino tensed. "At what cost?" "I don't know yet. But whatever it is, I'll deal with it. When the time comes, we'll deal with it together. Ino. I mean it." She pulled back to look at him, her expression fierce. "We're partners. Whatever happens to you, happens to me. That's how this works." "That's not. That's exactly how it works. You don't get to protect me from consequences you face because of me. That's not fair, and it's not what I want." Naruto stared at her, seeing the steel in her eyes, the determination that had carried her through centuries. "Okay," he said quietly. "Together. Together." She kissed him, soft and sweet, and for a moment, the weight of their burdens felt a little lighter. Chapter 17. 3 months after the Akatsuki mission, Sasuke left. It happened in the night, without warning, a letter on Naruto's doorstep, a final message from a friend he thought he understood. "I have to do this. Don't follow me. Sasuke." Naruto read the letter 3 times before the words sank in. Then he was moving, sprinting through the village, trying to catch up to someone who was already gone. The retrieval mission was a disaster. They found Sasuke at the Valley of the End, that ancient battlefield where the first Hokage had once fought his greatest enemy. He was different, darker, colder, wrapped in chakra that felt wrong in ways Naruto couldn't articulate. "Don't try to stop me," Sasuke said. "I have to." "Why?" "We're not friends. We're not teammates. We're just 2 people who happen to be thrown together by circumstance." "That's not true and you know it." "It is true." Sasuke's eyes blazed red, the Sharingan, fully awakened, spinning with terrible power. "You showed me that. You, with your reincarnation and your past life and your ridiculous love story. You proved that connections from previous lives don't mean anything. They're just leftovers. Residue that has no bearing on who we are now." Naruto felt like he'd been punched in the gut. "That's not what I... You built something new with Ino. Fine. Good for you. But I don't have that option. I don't want that option. The only thing I want is revenge. And I'm going to get it, no matter what. Sasuke, please. There's another way. We can find it together." "No." The word was final. Absolute. "This is my path. I walk it alone." They fought. It was the hardest battle of Naruto's life, harder than Gaara, harder than the Akatsuki, harder than any demon he'd faced in another world. Because he wasn't fighting to kill. He was fighting to save. And Sasuke? Sasuke was fighting with everything he had. In the end, Naruto lost. He lay in the mud at the bottom of the valley, rain pouring down on his broken body, watching Sasuke walk away. "I'm sorry," Sasuke said quietly. "But this is who I am. This is who I've always been." And then he was gone. Ino found him an hour later. She'd followed the retrieval team against orders, arriving just in time to see the aftermath. She held Naruto as he cried, great, racking sobs that seemed to tear themselves from somewhere deep inside, and she didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. Some wounds couldn't be healed with words. Chapter 18. The months after Sasuke's defection were dark. Naruto threw himself into training with a desperation that bordered on obsession. He pushed his body past its limits, again and again, driven by guilt and grief and the overwhelming need to become stronger. Strong enough to bring Sasuke back. Strong enough to protect the people he loved. Strong enough to never fail again. Ino watched with growing concern. "You're going to kill yourself," she said one evening, as he collapsed from another grueling session. "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You're running yourself into the ground. I have to get stronger. Not like this." She knelt beside him, her hands gentle on his shoulders. "This isn't training, Naruto. This is punishment. And it's not going to help. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. Her voice was sharp. You think Sasuke left because you weren't strong enough to stop him. You think if you'd been better, faster, more powerful, you could have changed his mind. But that's not how it works. Sasuke made his choice. Nothing you could have done would have changed that. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Because I've been where you are. She paused, her expression softening. After Himmel died, after you died, I blamed myself for years. Centuries, even. I told myself I should have been faster, should have found better healing magic, should have done something to keep you alive. Naruto looked at her, really looked, and saw the old pain reflected in her eyes. It didn't help. She continued. The self-flagellation, the endless guilt, none of it brought you back. None of it changed what happened. All it did was make me miserable. So what am I supposed to do? Just give up? Accept that Sasuke's gone and move on? No. You don't give up. You never give up. She smiled, sad and fierce. But you also don't destroy yourself in the process. You train smart, not desperate. You build your strength gradually, sustainably. You trust that when the time comes, you'll be ready. And if I'm not, then you try again. And again. And again, until you succeed or until there's nothing left to fight for. She took his hand. That's what heroes do. That's what you do. Naruto was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, he leaned his head against her shoulder. When did you get so wise? I'm 1,000 years old. I've had time to practice. Despite everything, he laughed. It wasn't much. But it was a start. Chapter 19. Jiraiya took Naruto away. It was framed as a training trip, 3 years of intensive work to prepare for the threats that were coming. The Akatsuki were still out there. Sasuke was still gone. The world was still dangerous, and Naruto needed every advantage he could get. But leaving Ino behind was the hardest thing he'd ever done. Come with me, he said the night before departure. We could train together. Learn together. Face whatever's coming side by side. I can't. Her voice was gentle but firm. I have responsibilities here. My team, my clan, my village. I can't abandon them, even for you. But, Naruto. She cupped his face in her hands. This isn't goodbye forever. It's just goodbye for now. We'll see each other again. We'll have more time. Promise? Promise. They kissed, long and desperate and full of everything they couldn't put into words. Then Naruto left, and Ino stayed, and the years began to pass. The training with Jiraiya was brutal. The Toad Sage pushed Naruto harder than anyone ever had, drawing out abilities that had been dormant for decades, forcing him to integrate his past life experience with his current body in ways he never considered. You're holding back, Jiraiya said one day, after a particularly intense session. I'm not. You are. You're still thinking like Himmel, trying to fight like Himmel. But you're not Himmel anymore. You're Naruto. And Naruto has advantages that Himmel never did. Like what? Like the Nine Tails, for one. Jiraiya's expression was serious. You've been treating the fox like a liability. A dangerous weapon you can't control. But that's not how it has to be. The fox tried to take over during the mission. If I hadn't. The fox saved your life during that mission. And yes, there's a cost. There's always a cost. But that doesn't mean you can't work with it. Find a balance. Naruto thought about this. About the beast lurking inside him, ancient and powerful and full of hatred. About the deal they'd struck, the price yet to be collected. How? He asked. Jiraiya smiled. Let me show you. The years passed. Naruto grew stronger. Stronger than he'd been as Himmel, stronger than he'd ever imagined being. He learned to work with the fox instead of against it. He mastered new techniques, refined old ones, pushed his body and mind to their absolute limits. And he missed Ino. Every single day. They wrote letters, long, rambling missives that traveled through the Toad network, but it wasn't the same. He wanted to hear her voice, see her face, hold her in his arms. He wanted to go home. But not yet. Not until he was ready. Not until he could face whatever was coming and win. Meanwhile, in Konoha, Ino was changing too. She'd taken Naruto's absence as an opportunity to grow on her own terms. She dove deeper into medical ninjutsu, pushing her healing abilities beyond what anyone thought possible. She expanded her mental techniques, developing new applications for the Yamanaka clan's signature jutsu. She became stronger, faster, more dangerous. But she also became softer. In unexpected ways. Without Naruto there to remind her of who she'd been, she found herself exploring who she wanted to become. She made new friends, deepened old relationships, learned to see this world and its people as more than just pale reflections of a past that no longer existed. She was still Frieren in her heart. But she was also Ino. And Ino was becoming someone worth being. "You're different," Sakura observed one day. "Good different, I think. But definitely different. People change." "Yeah, but you..." Sakura struggled for words. "You're more present now. Like you actually want to be here, instead of wishing you were somewhere else." Ino considered this. "Maybe I finally found something worth staying for." "Is that something, Naruto?" "Part of it." Ino smiled. "But not all of it. There's more to life than love, you know. Says the woman who writes letters to her boyfriend every single week. Those are tactical communications, not love letters." "Uh-huh. And the pressed flowers you include?" "Strategic floral arrangements." Sakura laughed. "You're ridiculous. Takes one to know one." They walked on through the village, two friends who'd found their way to each other despite everything. Life, Ino was learning, had a way of surprising you. Chapter 20. Naruto came home on a Tuesday. There was no fanfare, no announcement. He simply walked through the village gates, older and taller and carrying himself with a confidence that hadn't been there before. Ino was waiting for him. She'd known he was coming, the toads had passed word, but nothing could have prepared her for the actual moment. For seeing him again after 2.5 years of letters and longing. He looked good. Really good. The baby fat had melted away, replaced by lean muscle and sharp angles. His eyes were clearer, more focused. There was still that warmth in them, that boundless kindness, but there was something else too. Something harder. More certain. "Hey," he said. "Hey yourself." They stood there for a long moment, drinking each other in. Then Ino moved, crossing the space between them in 3 quick strides, and threw herself into his arms. He caught her easily, lifting her off her feet, burying his face in her hair. "God, I miss you," she breathed. "I miss you too. So much." They held each other for what felt like hours, not caring about the crowds watching or the gossip that would follow. "You got taller," Ino said eventually, pulling back to look at him. "You got prettier. Flatterer. Truth-teller." He smiled, that brilliant, genuine smile she'd been dreaming about. "Come on. We have a lot to catch up on. We really do." They walked into the village together, hand in hand, ready to face whatever came next. The next few weeks were a blur of activity. There were debriefings and meetings and reunion dinners with friends who changed as much as they had. There was catching up on everything that had happened, Asuma's full recovery, Shikamaru's promotion to chunin, Sakura's apprenticeship under Tsunade. And there was time. Finally, blessedly, time alone together. "Tell me everything," Ino said one night, as they lay on the roof of her family's shop, watching the stars. So Naruto did. He told her about the training with Jiraiya, about the battles and the breakthroughs and the moments of despair. He told her about learning to work with the fox, about the delicate balance they'd achieved. He told her about missing her every single day, about the letters he'd written and the ones he'd wanted to write but couldn't find the words for. In return, she told him about her own growth. About the medical techniques she'd developed, the battles she'd fought, the friends she'd made. She told him about learning to be Ino instead of just Frieren in disguise. About finding joy in this life, this world, instead of constantly yearning for one that no longer existed. "We've both changed," she said finally. "We have. Is that okay? Do you still love you?" He turned to face her, his expression soft. "I never stopped. Not for a second. And honestly, I think I love you even more now. Because you're not just the person I remember. You're the person you've become. And that person is amazing." Ino blinked back tears. "That was really smooth. I've been practicing. For 2.5 years? Some of us take longer to figure out our feelings." She laughed, bright and warm, and kissed him until either of them could think straight. The world was still dangerous. The Akatsuki were still out there. Sasuke was still gone. 1,000 challenges lay ahead, any one of which could destroy everything they'd built. But in that moment, none of it mattered. They were together. They were happy. That was enough. Chapter 21. The peace lasted 3 months. Naruto should have known better than to get comfortable. The world didn't stop being dangerous just because he'd found happiness. If anything, happiness made the danger worse, gave the universe a bigger target to aim for. The reports started trickling in slowly. Akatsuki activity on the rise. Jinchuriki going missing from other villages. Whispers of something big, something terrible, building on the horizon. "They're coming for you," Tsunade said during one of their briefings. Her expression was grim. "It's not a matter of if. It's a matter of when." "I know. Are you ready?" Naruto thought about the training he'd done, the strength he'd gained, the allies standing beside him. He thought about Ino, waiting for him outside, ready to face whatever came. "I will be," he said. The attack came without warning. One moment, Konoha was peaceful, markets bustling, children playing, normal life proceeding as normal lives do. The next, the sky exploded. Pain. 6 bodies, 1 mind. The leader of the Akatsuki, come to claim the Nine Tails for himself. The battle that followed was unlike anything the village had ever seen. Buildings crumbled. Streets cratered. Ninjas who had survived decades of war fell like wheat before a scythe. It was devastation on a scale that defied comprehension. And at the center of it all, Naruto Uzumaki stood his ground. "You cannot win," Pain said, his voice echoing from 6 mouths simultaneously. "The world is pain. And pain is God. I don't believe that. Belief is irrelevant. Reality cares nothing for your hope. Then reality is wrong." They clashed, the Jinchuriki and the God, 2 forces of nature colliding with earth-shaking force. Naruto threw everything he had at Pain, burning through his reserves, pushing his body past breaking points he never imagined. It wasn't enough. Pain was too strong. Too skilled. Too many. Every time Naruto destroyed one body, another took its place. Every technique he tried was countered, every strategy anticipated. He was losing. And then Ino appeared. "Get out of here!" Naruto shouted, even as he blocked another devastating attack. "This isn't your fight. Like hell it isn't." Ino's hands were glowing with chakra, her expression fierce. "You don't get to play hero alone. Not anymore. Ino. Shut up and fight. I'll handle the support." She was true to her word. As Naruto engaged Pain directly, Ino worked behind the lines, healing the wounded, coordinating the other ninja, using her mental techniques to disrupt Pain's control over his paths. It shouldn't have worked. 2 people against a god? Impossible odds. Foolish to even try. But they weren't just 2 people. They were 2 souls who had loved each other across lifetimes. 2 warriors who had fought demons and monsters and the darkness at the end of the world. 2 hearts that refused, absolutely refused, to give up. And sometimes, refusal was enough. The turning point came when Pain made a mistake. He'd gotten arrogant, certain of his victory. He extended too far, left an opening, and Naruto exploited it ruthlessly. The main path, the one that housed Pain's real consciousness, went down hard. And in that moment of vulnerability, Ino struck. Her mind invaded his. Not to control, she wasn't powerful enough for that, but to understand. To see. To find the human being buried beneath all that pain and ideology. What she found surprised her. "Nagato," the mind whispered. "My name is Nagato. And I just want the world to stop hurting." She felt his history like it was her own. The wars. The loss. The descent into despair and the decision that if peace could not be achieved through compassion, it would be achieved through fear. She understood, in that moment, how a good man could become a monster. And she also understood how to stop him. "There's another way," she sent back, as gently as she could. "A harder way. A longer way. But a real way. You don't have to be a god. You just have to be human." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Nagato, Pain, spoke. "Impossible," he said. "Your world cannot be saved through kindness. I have seen the truth of humanity. We are creatures of destruction. Of suffering. Of pain. Some of us are." Ino agreed. "But not all. And even those who are, even they can change. Can grow. Can become better. You truly believe that?" "I know that." She thought of Naruto, standing bloody and unbowed despite everything. "I've seen it with my own eyes." Another silence. Longer this time. Then Nagato sighed, a sound of exhaustion, of surrender, of something that might have been hope. "Perhaps," he said quietly. "Perhaps you're right. Perhaps there is another way." The battle ended. Chapter 22. The cost of Pain's attack was staggering. Half the village lay in ruins. Hundreds were dead. Thousands more were injured. The damage would take years to repair, and some wounds would never fully heal. But Konoha survived. Its people survived. And that, in the end, was what mattered. Nagato used his final technique, a resurrection jutsu that brought back everyone who had died in the attack. It killed him, in the end. The last act of a broken man trying to make things right. Naruto stood at his grave, Ino beside him, and tried to find the words for what he felt. "He wasn't evil," he said finally. "Not really. He was just broken. By a world that couldn't stop hurting him. Most people are," Ino replied softly. "Broken, I mean. In one way or another. It's what we do with that brokenness that defines us. And what did he do? He made mistakes. Terrible mistakes. But in the end, he tried to fix them. Tried to be better. She took his hand. That has to count for something. Does it? I don't know. But I'd like to think so. They stood there for a long time, mourning a man they'd barely known, who had done terrible things for what he thought were good reasons. The world was complicated. People were complicated. And forgiveness was the most complicated thing of all. Chapter 23. The rebuilding effort brought people together in unexpected ways. Teams that had been rivals became allies. Clans that had feuded for generations put aside their differences. The village, wounded but not broken, began to heal. And at the center of it all, Naruto and Ino worked side by side. They helped clear rubble and distribute supplies. They healed the wounded and comforted the grieving. They showed up, day after day, doing the unglamorous work of putting a community back together. You don't have to do this, you know, Kakashi observed one evening, as Naruto hauled another load of debris to a disposal site. You're a hero now. The man who defeated pain. You could delegate. Being a hero isn't about the big moments, Naruto said. It's about showing up. Every day. For the people who need you. Kakashi was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled, though it was hidden behind his mask. You sound like someone I used to know, he said. Who? Your father. Naruto nearly dropped the debris he was carrying. You knew my father? He was my teacher. The fourth Hokage. Why? The man who sealed the 9 tails inside you. Kakashi's visible eye was soft with memory. He would be proud of you, Naruto. So proud. It was too much. The emotion, the revelation, the weight of it all. Naruto felt tears prick at his eyes, and he didn't bother trying to hide them. Thank you, he managed. That means a lot. Just telling the truth. Kakashi patted his shoulder and walked away, leaving Naruto to process everything he'd learned. That night, Naruto told Ino about his father. They sat on the half-rebuilt Hokage monument, looking out at a village that was slowly coming back to life, and he shared everything. The fourth Hokage. Why? The ceiling. The sacrifice that had given Naruto his burden but also, in a strange way, his purpose. He loved you, Ino said when he finished. Even though he never got to meet you. He loved you enough to believe you could carry this weight. Do you think he was right? To choose me? I think he made the only choice he could. And I think you've proven, over and over again, that his faith wasn't misplaced. Sometimes I'm not sure. Sometimes I feel like I'm just barely holding on. Everyone feels that way sometimes. She leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. The difference is that you keep going anyway. Even when it's hard. Even when it hurts. That's what makes you a hero. You sound like my past life self. Maybe that's because some truths are eternal. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge one by one. I love you, Naruto said quietly. I know. I'm going to marry you someday. Ino's breath caught. What? Not now. Not yet. There's still so much we have to do, so many battles to fight. But someday, when this is all over, I'm going to stand in front of everyone we know and tell them that you're my partner. My equal. My everything. She was crying now, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. Is that a proposal? It's a promise. The proposal will come later, when I can give you the moment you deserve. You're an idiot. You're idiot. Yeah. She kissed him, soft and sweet. My idiot. Chapter 24. The Fourth Shinobi World War started 6 months after Pain's attack. Naruto had known it was coming. The signs were everywhere. Akatsuki's final moves, the alliance forming between the 5 great villages, the sense that everything was building toward a single, catastrophic confrontation. But knowing something was coming and being prepared for it were two different things. The Akatsuki's plan was finally revealed: resurrect the 10 tails, become its Jinchuriki, cast the entire world into an endless dream. It was madness on a scale that defied comprehension, a plan so ambitious, so devastating, that even Naruto's past life experiences couldn't fully prepare him for it. But he would face it anyway. Because that's what heroes did. You're not going alone, Ino said flatly, when he tried to suggest otherwise. It's going to be dangerous. More dangerous than anything we've ever faced. I know. You could die. So could you. Her expression was fierce. And if you think I'm going to let you walk into the apocalypse without me, you don't know me at all. Ino. No. I spent 1,000 years watching people I loved walk away to fight battles I couldn't join. I spent a lifetime standing aside while Himmel threw himself into danger again and again. I'm not doing it anymore. She stepped closer, grabbing his hands. We're partners, Naruto. Real partners. That means we face everything together. The good and the bad. The easy and the impossible. Whatever happens, we happen side by side. He should have argued. Should have insisted she stay safe. Should have done what his instincts screamed at him to do. Instead, he pulled her into his arms and held her tight. Together, he agreed. Together. Chapter 25. The war was everything Naruto had feared and more. Days of continuous fighting. Casualties mounting faster than anyone could count. The Allied forces struggling against enemies who refused to stay dead, against a man with the power of gods at his fingertips. But they fought on. Because the alternative was surrender, and surrender meant the end of everything. Naruto was everywhere at once, shadow clones spreading across dozens of battlefields, each one fighting with the skill of a veteran, the desperation of the doomed. He pushed himself past every limit, burned through chakra reserves that should have been impossible, became a one-man army in the truest sense of the word. And through it all, Ino was there. She wasn't on the front lines, her skills were better used in coordination and healing, but she was connected to him through the bond they shared. He felt her presence like a steady warmth in the back of his mind, a reminder of what he was fighting for. Don't give up, she sent, when his strength began to flag. Never, he sent back. The final confrontation came at the end of the third day. Madara Uchiha, resurrected and nearly unstoppable. Obito Uchiha, twisted by grief and ideology into something barely human. And behind them, the towering form of the Ten Tails, a beast of such power that reality itself seemed to crack around it. Naruto faced them alone. Not by choice. His allies had been scattered, overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the enemy forces. But the result was the same. One man against the end of the world. You cannot win, Madara said, his voice echoing with terrible certainty. This world is flawed beyond repair. Only through the infinite Tsukuyomi can it be perfected. Perfect isn't what makes things worthwhile, Naruto replied. Imperfection is. Struggle is. The journey, not the destination. That's what gives life meaning. Naive philosophy from a naive child. Maybe. But I'd rather be naive than become a monster in pursuit of perfection. They clashed. The battle was beyond description. Techniques that scarred the earth. Explosions that lit up the sky. Two philosophies colliding with the force of tectonic plates, either willing to yield. Naruto called on everything he had. The skills from his past life. The training from this one. The power of the Nine Tails, finally working in true harmony with its host. He became something more than human, more than Jinchuriki, something that had never existed before. And still, it wasn't enough. Madara was too strong. Too experienced. Too immortal. Every wound Naruto inflicted healed in seconds. Every advantage he gained was countered by ancient techniques and eternal patience. I can't do this alone, Naruto realized, as another attack sent him crashing into a mountainside. And then, impossibly, a voice echoed in his mind. You're not alone. Ino. She was there. Not physically, her body was miles away, coordinating the medical teams, but mentally, spiritually. She'd pushed her Yamanaka techniques beyond anything they'd ever been meant to do, creating a bridge between their consciousnesses. I'm with you, she said. Always. It's not enough. He's too strong. Then we make it enough. And then she did something that should have been impossible. She shared herself with him. Not her thoughts. Not her memories. Her essence. The core of who she was, the accumulated wisdom and power of 1,000 years, flowing through the bond between them and into Naruto's soul. It was like being struck by lightning. Like being remade from the inside out. Power flooded through him. Power he'd never imagined. Power that felt both utterly foreign and completely familiar. For a moment, he wasn't just Naruto. He was Naruto and Ino. Himmel and Frieren. Two souls who had loved each other across lifetimes, finally fighting as one. What? Madara actually stepped back, surprise flickering across his immortal face. What are you? I'm exactly what you're not, Naruto said, and his voice resonated with a harmony that shouldn't have been possible. Someone who found something worth fighting for. The final attack was almost anticlimactic. A single strike, carrying the combined will of two people who refused to give up. It pierced through Madara's defenses, through his immortality, through the twisted ideology that had driven him for centuries. And then, finally, the war was over. Chapter 26. The world survived. Barely. With scars that would take generations to heal. But it survived. Naruto woke 3 days after the final battle, in a hospital bed, with Ino sleeping in the chair beside him. Her hand was wrapped around his, her grip tight even in slumber. She's beautiful, he thought. Not for the first time. Probably not for the last. He squeezed her hand, and her eyes fluttered open. Hey, she said, her voice rough with sleep. Hey yourself? You're awake. Seems that way. Good. She sat up, rubbing her eyes. Because I have a lot of yelling to do, And it wouldn't be the same if you were unconscious. Yelling? You almost died, Naruto. Again. Do you have any idea how worried I was? I think I have some idea, yeah? Don't be cute. I'm serious. But she was smiling now, tears gathering at the corners of her eyes. You stupid, brave, wonderful idiot. Guilty as charged. She leaned forward and kissed him, soft and desperate, and full of everything she couldn't put into words. I love you, she said against his lips. I love you too. Don't ever scare me like that again. I can't promise that. But I can promise I'll always come back. That's not, she sighed. That's going to have to be good enough, isn't it? Yeah. I think it is. They held each other for a long time, two survivors who had somehow made it through the end of the world. Outside, the sun was rising on a new day. Chapter 27. 5 years later. The world had changed. The great villages were at peace, real peace, not the armed détente that had existed before. The alliance formed during the war had held, strengthened by the shared trauma and the collective determination to never let such horror happen again. Sasuke had come home. It had taken years, years of soul-searching, of atonement, of slowly rebuilding the bridges he'd burned. But he'd made it back, in the end. And the village, in its imperfect way, had welcomed him. You look happy, Sasuke observed one day, as they sat on the Hokage monument watching the sunset. I am happy, Naruto replied. It suits you. What about you? Are you happy? Sasuke was quiet for a moment. I'm learning to be. It's harder than I expected. Most things worth doing are. When did you get so philosophical? I've always been philosophical. You just never paid attention. Sasuke snorted. Fair enough. They sat in comfortable silence, two old friends who had hurt each other, and healed each other, and somehow found their way back to this moment. I'm going to ask her to marry me, Naruto said eventually. Sasuke raised an eyebrow. Finally. I thought you were going to wait forever. I wanted to make sure everything was right. That we were ready. And now you are? Naruto thought about Ino. About everything they'd been through, everything they'd become, everything they still had left to discover. Yeah, he said. Now we are. Epilogue forever. The proposal was perfect. Not because of the setting, though the flower field outside the village was beautiful, the sunset painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. Not because of the words, though Naruto had practiced them for weeks, trying to find exactly the right way to express what she meant to him. It was perfect because it was them. We've known each other a long time, Naruto began, holding Ino's hands in his. Longer than anyone would believe. We've loved each other across lifetimes. Across worlds. Across everything that should have made love impossible. Ino was already crying, though she was trying to hide it. I loved you as Himmel. I love you as Naruto. And if we're reborn 1,000 more times, I'll love you then too. That's not going to change. Not ever. He pulled out the ring, a simple band of silver, set with a small green stone that reminded him of her eyes in another life. Ino Yamanaka. Frieren. Whatever you want to call yourself, whoever you want to be, will you marry me? She laughed, a bright, joyful sound that seemed to light up the entire field. Yes, she said. Of course yes. Always yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger, and they kissed as the sun sank below the horizon, painting the world in the colors of ending and beginning all at once. The wedding was small. Just their closest friends and family, gathered in the flower field where he proposed. Sakura stood beside Ino, tears streaming down her face. Sasuke stood beside Naruto, trying very hard to look like he wasn't emotional. Their vows were simple. The ceremony was short. But what they felt, what they'd always felt, radiated from them like warmth from a sun. I do, Ino said. I do, Naruto said. And then they kissed, and their friends cheered, and somewhere in the universe, the souls of Himmel and Frieren smiled. Years passed. Good years. Hard years. Years of laughter and tears and all the complicated beauty that came with building a life together. They had children, 2 of them, a boy and a girl, who inherited their parents' strength and stubbornness and capacity for love. They watched their friends grow and change and find their own happiness. They faced new challenges, new enemies, new adventures. And through it all, they faced them together. Do you ever think about it? Ino asked one evening, as they sat on their porch watching their children play in the yard. The past. The people we used to be. Sometimes, Naruto admitted. But not as much as I used to. Why not? Because I don't need to. He took her hand, intertwining their fingers like he'd done 1,000 times before. Everything I loved about the past is right here, in the present. In you. In them. He nodded toward their children. In the life we've built together. That's very romantic. I have my moments. She leaned against him, her head on his shoulder, and they watched the sunset together. I love you, she said. I love you too. Always have. Always will. The children ran over, demanding attention, and the peaceful moment dissolved into happy chaos. But that was okay. That was life, messy and imperfect and absolutely, wonderfully, irrefutably real. And Naruto Uzumaki, hero of 2 lifetimes, knew that he wouldn't have it any other way. Epilogue. Centuries later. The world had changed beyond recognition. Technologies that Naruto and Ino couldn't have imagined in their first or second lives. Societies that had risen and fallen and risen again. Everything different, everything new. But some things remained constant. 2 souls, bound together across time. They found each other in every life, no matter how different the circumstances. Sometimes they recognized each other immediately, sometimes it took years. But they always found their way back. It was their friends, and new lives often said, like they were destined to be together. And maybe they were. But more than destiny, it was choice. The choice to keep looking. To keep hoping. To keep loving, no matter how many lifetimes it took. Because some loves were too strong to be contained by a single life. Some loves were eternal. And in the end, isn't that the most romantic truth of all? That love, real love, finds a way. Always.